Ich bin gleich wieder da, Leute. Wir sind jetzt live. Das ist gut. Wir sind gleich. Ich bin gleich da. Ich muss erstmal auf Toilette gehen. Leute, übrigens, kennt ihr das? Das ist, wie ihr sehen könnt, Booster. Das, was tatsächlich immer so viel getrunken hat. Der hat einen neuen Geschmack rausgebracht. Booster Eis. Und ich dachte mir mal so, ich probiere das mal. Also ich habe das schon probiert. Ich habe das schon leer ausgetrunken. Also fast leer ausgetrunken. Mit ein bisschen was drin. Muss ich sagen, einen interessanten Geschmack. Schmeckt irgendwie ein bisschen nach Zimt. Irgendwie ein bisschen nach Minze und ein bisschen nach Sprite. Irgendwie eine Mischung von diese drei Dinger irgendwie. Oder Substanzen. Schmeckt nicht wirklich so gut, aber mit Cola kann man es ziemlich gut mischen. Ja. Ich würde sagen, muss ich es nicht unbedingt holen, aber war halt neu. War Rabatt. Deswegen dachte ich mir, ich hole es mir. Ganz schön lecker. Und ich auch nicht, was passiert, oder wo ich zurückgekommen bin. Ja. Wo soll ich anfangen? So, ich hab mir einen Booster geholt, hatte mir Chips geholt, dann hatte ich mir so vor mein Haus ein bisschen einen kleinen Park, wo man sich hinsetzen kann und so, da habe ich Chips gegessen, ein bisschen, habe ich Booster ein bisschen getrunken. Danach wollte ich nach oben gehen, so nach dem Jobcoach, also einen Jobcoach gehabt und ich war fertig, dann bin ich nach oben gegangen. Und dann bin ich mit einem Fahrstuhl nach oben gefahren, Alter, war im Flur gewesen, wollte nach oben im Flur laufen und dann habe ich halt sehr, sehr laut geredet, weil ich mit einer Person geredet habe. Ich denke, es war eine Person, die ich jetzt nicht erwähnen darf. Aber ja, ich habe mit dieser Person sehr laut geredet und dann war doch dieser andere Nachbar gewesen, der da oben war und was irgendwie, ich konnte nicht verstehen, dieser Nachbar hatte irgendein Problem gehabt mit mir irgendwie, in so irgendeiner Art. Der hat irgendwie angefangen zu schreien, so, ey, sei doch mal ruhig da unten, halt doch dein Maul, du bist immer so laut. Und ich dachte mir so, what the fuck? Ich dachte mir so, was zum Teufel? Wer sagt denn sowas so? Und dann habe ich nach oben geguckt und habe gesagt, wie bitte? Wessen Teufel sind Sie denn? Würden Sie mal still sein? Was sagt man doch gar nicht, Alter. Vor allem mit so einer ekelhaften Art, guck mal, das ist nicht mit mir an. Und dann sagt er so, ja, du hast richtig verstanden. Du bist so extrem laut die ganze Zeit, bist ruhig, Alter. Jetzt rufe ich immer die Polizei und so, wenn sie die Schnauze voll von dir. Und so, und dann sagt sie so, ach, ich bin der laut ist. Und so habe ich gesagt, nur weil ich jetzt laut hier rede, heißt nicht, dass sie so ankommen soll mit mir. So, sie können ihren Mund mal halten. Dann hat er gesagt, und ist ja richtig mit ihm geworden, dann kam er noch unten so, er hat gesagt, du solltest jetzt lieber still sein. Oder ich werde gleich mit deinen Eltern oder deinen anderen Verwandten da mal reden. Und dann, gesagt, dann habe ich zu sie gesagt, was wollen Sie jetzt zu mir? Alter, gehen Sie mal erstmal ein paar Schritte von mir mal weiter weg. Sonst sehen wir, was gleich passieren wird. Und dann kam der, hat es dann gewagt, der kam dann einfach zu mir, da habe ich ihn einfach mal erstmal weggeschubst, so. Und dann dachte er sich so, was zum Teufel? Und dann ist er zu mir angerannt und wollte mir eine Schelle geben, aber ich bin dann ausgewichen. Im Moment, wo er so die Schelle geben wollte, bin ich ausgewichen. Und dann bin ich auf ihn geschossen. Mit voller Wucht also mein Gesicht ist mit voller Wucht gegen ihn gestoßen. So, ich habe ein Foto gehabt danach, wo ich nach Hause kam, aber kann ich euch mal zeigen. Hier, wartet mal. Hier, so sah mein Mund danach aus. Nicht, weil er mir eine Faust ins Maul gegeben hat, sondern weil ich halt volle Wucht mit meinem Gesicht gegen ihn geknallt bin. Er war halt ein riesiger, dicker Mann. Deswegen, ich denke, ihr könnt es jetzt sehen. Ja, das ist halt passiert und danach habe ich in den Momenten versucht, irgendwie nach hinten zu drücken, ihn auf den Boden zu schmeißen. hat irgendwie so gut wie kaum was gebracht, aber wahrscheinlich in dem Moment hat er sich gewundert, was zum Teufel ich tue, und dann ist er aus nach hinten gestolpert, weil ich ihn da hinten geschubst habe und ist auf den Boden gefallen irgendwie. Danach bin ich instant aufgestanden erstmal, und dann bin ich aufgestanden, habe ihn erstmal so richtig volle Wucht gegen seinen Bauch getreten irgendwie, so zweimal oder sowas. Danach bin ich schnell in mein Haus reingerannt, also in meine Wohnung reingerannt, habe schnell die Tür zugemacht, und er stand sofort dann gleich danach auf und hat dagegen eine Tür erstmal richtig hart gehauen. Jetzt so, du kommst damit nicht durch und so, und irgendeinen Scheiß gebrüllt so. Und ich dachte mir so, ja, ja, was auch immer sie sagen, sollten sie sich lieber verpissen, bevor ich die Polizei anrufe und sowas. Und dann ist er noch abgehauen, ich weiß nicht, denke in seine Wohnung gegangen oder irgendwas so. Und ja, das war's halt gewesen. Und danach habe ich meinen Mund abgewaschen und sowas, und dann mit Zug darüber geredet und sowas. Also es war ziemlich verrückt gewesen. So. Also ich würde sagen, ich habe nichts falsch gemacht, so, weil man geht nicht zu mir und sagt, so meinen Mund halten, nur weil ich mit einer Person rede, halt im Flur. Das ist. Es gibt andere, tausend andere Leute, die laut im Flur sind. Aber ich bin das Problem anscheinend für ihn. Und da hat er schon hat er sein blaues Mund ja schon erlebt, so, ganz ehrlich, so, weil was macht man mit ihm einfach nicht so? Mir egal, was für eine Person er ist oder wie groß er ist, doch keine Angst. So, ich meine, wenn man so eine Wörter schwingt, so, kann ich genauso auch machen, so. Ich habe keine Angst mehr. Die Tage, wo Ramteam sich zurückgehalten hat, ist vorbei. Ich habe keine Angst mehr, es ist vorbei. So, Ramteam kommt jetzt wieder zurück. So, und niemand will Ramteam ficken. Okay, man sieht nichts mehr. Ja, das war nur ein bisschen leichtes Blut gewesen und so. Danach hat es auch wie wild gesabbert, irgendwie aus irgendwelchen Gründen, keine Ahnung, wahrscheinlich, weil es aus der Puste war. Der Typ war auch so wild, wie aus der Puste gewesen, wie wild gesabbert, hat es irgendwie geputzt, und ja. Ziemlich kranke Story auf jeden Fall. Ich weiß nicht, was er tut. Danach habe ich nichts mehr von ihm gesehen. So, ich weiß nicht, was er macht. Er ruft die Bullen. Machen halt, wird er schon sehen. Oder er greift mich wahrscheinlich irgendwann wieder mal an. Wenn er das tut, dann werde ich die Bullen anrufen, dann habe ich einen guten Grund zu sagen, dass er mich einfach angegriffen hat. Dann kann er nichts machen, so. Und dann kann er sagen, er hat mich aber zuerst angegriffen. Und dann sagen die, ja, schön, aber wo sind die Beweise? Und dann haben die keine Beweise, aber ich habe einen Beweis, weil ich werde filmen dann. Und also ist der auf jeden Fall am Arsch dann, wenn ich die Bullen dann anrufe und hier habe. Und dann wir im, keine Ahnung, im Gericht sitzen. Da wird er auf jeden Fall richtig verkackt, weil ich Beweise habe und er hat nix. So, wisst ihr, Leute? Ach, ist das auch egal. Naja, was auch immer. Also der Typ war riesig gewesen, Alter. Also ich hab den fast gar nicht mehr wegbekommen, aber dann ist er wie nach hinten gestolpert kurz und dann ist er auf den Boden geknallt, Alter. Der ganze Flur angefangen so wie ein Witz zu wackeln, Alter. Das war richtig, irgendwie schon richtig schrecklich irgendwie so. Der sah halt auch irgendwie ein bisschen aus wie, die sah nicht aus wie Herr Pence, aber er hatte auch die Größe wie von Herr Pence. Er war so breit und so groß wie Herr Pence halt. Also ja, könnt ihr euch mal vorstellen. Ich weiß, niemand weiß, wer Herr Pence ist. Es war ein Schullehrer in meiner Sekundarschule, aber der war schon ziemlich groß und der war ziemlich breit. Ja, also, ja, keine Ahnung. Ja, also um euch jetzt so was zu sagen, so, das war eine ziemlich crazy Story. Und ja, ist jetzt auch sowieso egal. Ich hoffe mal, das passiert nicht nochmal. Wenn ja, dann werden die ja schon sehen, weil niemand fickt den Enigma, niemand fickt den Enigma, Enigma hat die Chance voll, zu langes ertragen, jetzt greift er zurück an! Ja, so, gehen wir so weiter. Hast du es auch gehört? Dieser Nachbar, dieser ficker Nachbar, der ist da oben nämlich angegriffen hat. Ja, du hörst, du Schwule, ja, du hörst das, du Pisser, du Wichser, du. Nichts mehr, weil ich dich nochmal packen, wenn du zu mir kommst, du riesiges Fettfleischmonster. Ist mir ehrlich, Alter. Ich meine, gerade er muss reden, wenn er auch jetzt laut ist mit seinen ganzen anderen Verwandten dort. Schreien hier rum, hauen ganz gegen den Boden, Alter. Was weiß ich, was sie da tun, aber ich bin das Problem auf jeden Fall. Natürlich bin ich das Problem. Ich habe nur neidisch, dass mein Leben einfach chille und genieße und er wahrscheinlich in 2 Jahren an einen Herzinfarkt schrecken wird irgendwie, weil er nicht mehr laufen kann und im Rollstuhl sitzen wird. Was weiß ich was. Der Typ kann mal seinen Mund halten, ganz ehrlich. Was denkt er, wer er ist? Ich finde, was gestern passiert ist, war wahrscheinlich das längste gewesen, was er gemacht hat von Bewegung her. So, wisst ihr, wahrscheinlich das war es am längsten her gewesen, dass er so eine richtige Bewegung hat, ist der Typ. War das nicht ein Türke? Ja, es war ein Araber gewesen, Alter. irgendwie so Araber, Alter, wo sind, ich habe seine Wörter fast gar nicht mehr verstanden. Ich habe aber nur zu ihm gesagt, er soll mal dieses Verpissen gehen und mal ein paar Schritte mal von mir weggehen und mal zu seinem Haus mal gehen dort und mich mal in Ruhe lassen, so. Was sind denn seine Probleme da, so, ganz ehrlich. So, ich habe ja nicht gesagt, komm doch mal her, ich will dich jetzt zerhauen oder so, keine Ahnung. Er soll sich einfach verpissen gehen und seinen Mund halten, so. Aber er hat halt genau das Gegenteil gemacht und dann hat er schon gesehen, fertig. Und das war nicht von ihm der Stuhl. Welcher Stuhl? Was meinst du mit Stuhl, bitteschön? Ich meine, wir hatten, ich glaube, einen coolen Stuhl im Flur und den haben wir mit diesem anderen Scheißstuhl gewechselt. Wenn irgendwann Gainer mal kommt, was ich nicht bezweifle mehr, äh, wahrscheinlich wird er den Stuhl wahrscheinlich kaputt machen. Wahrscheinlich muss ich wahrscheinlich draufsetzen und der geht kaputt dann. Weil er ist nicht so ein stabiler Stuhl, aber auch viel besser als der andere Stuhl. War klar, sind auch hart aggressiv. Natürlich sind die hart aggressiv. Welcher aber ist nicht hart aggressiv, Alter. Du machst die kleinste Sache und du kriegst die mal ganz kurz an, die drehen gleich am Rad. So. Und keine Ahnung, ich finde das aber scheiße so. Und ich war ja nicht der Aggressive gewesen, ja, in diesem Moment. Es war der Typ gewesen, der über mir war. So, ich habe einfach gesagt, er soll den Mund halten, so. Und der brüllt so rum und so, kommt nach unten, Alter, kommt auf mich angerannt, Alter, so, will mich dann schlagen, so, was ist denn für ein Problem? Dann muss ich natürlich irgendwie mich wehren, muss ihn nach unten hauen und ihn wegtreten, so, damit er aufhört. So, und danach schnell in meine Wohnung reingehen, damit er mich nicht packt oder sowas. Diese schwarze Couch. Diese schwarze Couch kam nicht von diesen Nachbarn, nein, Alter. Als würden die sich leisten, irgendwelche Dinge wegzugeben, Alter. Das kam von einem anderen. Das waren andere zwei Leute gewesen, so, die haben nichts gemacht, die sind ja gar nicht mal in meinem Flur. Es gibt verschiedene Flure in diesem Haus. So, ich denke, es gibt Flur A, Flur B, Flur C oder sowas. Ich denke, es gibt Flur B oder sowas. In diesem denke ich, ist Flur C. So, sage ich jetzt mal. Also waren das nicht die gewesen, so. Der Nachbar ist in Flur B, ist halt eins höher. Deswegen. Und der war derjenige, der mich angegriffen hat und mich beleidigt hat. Iraner habe ich nie aggressiv gesehen, nee, weil Iraner sind eigentlich auch ganz so aggressiv. Die sind definitiv besser als Türken oder Araber oder was weiß ich wer. So, ich meine, Iraner sind wirklich nicht so aggressiv. Sind halt wirklich nichts gegen halt, naja, Araber oder sowas. Oder, keine Ahnung wer, Türken oder was weiß ich was, so. Die sind definitiv viel besser auf jeden Fall so. Ich meine, es gibt ja auch nicht so viele Perser hier in Deutschland. Es gibt ein paar, aber nicht so viele. Aber wenn auch, dann siehst du ja keinen irgendwie rumlaufen oder rumschreien oder eigentlich attackieren so. Wenn dann sind es meistens die Türken oder die Araber und das ist einfach die Wahrheit so. Und ja, fertig halt. Vielleicht weiß auch die, weil die Couch haben wollte, diese Couch, die, Alter. Das ist eine Couch, die lag im Flur, Alter. Als würde die gewollt haben. Ich hätte sie schon längst genommen. So, die lag da für einen Tag und danach, paar Stunden später habe ich sie genommen. So, ich denke nicht, dass er in ein paar Stunden irgendwie nach unten kam und sich die Couch nehmen wollte. Hätte er sie gesehen, hätte er sie ja nehmen können. So, die stand ja bis 0 Uhr oder bis 2 Uhr nachts noch dort. So, hat er genügend Zeit gehabt, die er noch zu nehmen, hat er aber nicht getan. Also, ist das kein Grund, ehrlich gesagt, am Ende so, wirklich. So, also, keine Ahnung. Die lag da in der dritten Etage im Flur, hätte sie sich nehmen können, wenn er wollte, hat er es nicht getan. Also gibt's da keinen Grund, sauer zu werden, so. Ja, sein Pech. Ich denke nicht, dass es daran lag, es lag aber daran, weil er sauer war, weil ich irgendwie laut bin die ganze Zeit. Und dann denke ich mir so, ja, ist das irgendwie ein Problem für dich, dass ich so laut bin? Du bist ja auch immer laut. So, ganz ehrlich. So, ich meine, warum kann man etwas, sein eigenes Ding machen, statt immer die anderen irgendwas vorzuwerfen? So, was ist denn das für eine Scheiße? Das ist halt einfach extrem nervig so. Ein Problem dieser Menschen, dass ich immer anderen was vorwerfe, aber sind selber nicht besser. Nee, brauchst du gar nicht selten, so ist meistens was tun, was du nicht findest. So, warum willst du die ganze Zeit so ein Video dazu finden? Das brauchst du gar nicht. Das ist sowieso unnötig, so, keine Ahnung. Ich meine, in der Schule sieht man was halt doch die ganze Zeit schon, da braucht man kein Video mehr. Das ist der Real Life, ja. Naja, ich werde heute wieder ein bisschen Maul Sunshine streamen, ein bisschen Nevermind Bros. Ich weiß nicht wirklich viel, was ich Maul Sunshine noch machen kann. Ich meine, natürlich fehlen mir noch ein paar Sterne so. Ähm, Guck mal, das Preis nicht, wenn man was wie ist aber egal. Was zum Teufel. Ich meine, wenn man sonst schon stimmt, kann ich ja die 100 Münzen noch sagen in jeder Welt so. Die gehen sogar auf Beine darauf und schlagen die so, ja, das ist natürlich nicht so schön. Das sollte man natürlich nicht machen, so, weil ich meine, die Leute, die so eine Behinderung haben, können ja nichts am Ende dafür, so, die können sowas ja nicht kontrollieren, so. Und wenn die dann irgendwas machen oder irgendwas sagen oder was weiß ich was tun, was die dann ärgert, dann, ja, mein Gott, denke ich halt einfach weiter so. Und heißt ja kein Grund, dass du auf so eine Leute eingehen musst, so gleich. Oder generell, ob es bei behindert oder normalen Menschen ist, halt alles dasselbe, wirklich. So, was ich gesagt habe, ich habe einfach nur ein Wort gesagt, ich habe gesagt, sei du doch still und sei ruhig, Mann. Und fertig, so. Und da wollte ich schon, in meine Wohnung rein und dann siehst du, er kommt so nach unten angerannt zu tun, so. Und dachte ich mir so, was zum Teufel ist jetzt los? Und dann kommt der so und sagt so, ich möchte mit deinen Eltern ruhig und sagt so, nee, du kannst mal jetzt mal abhauen. So. Weil hätte ich die Tür aufgemacht, dann wäre er wahrscheinlich so reingerannt oder sowas, was weiß ich, was er getan hat, Alter. Ja, ich meine, der war derjenige, der angefangen hat, irgendwie mit dem Scheiß. Naja, was auch immer. Warte mal kurz. Naja, ich bin leid. Tschüss, dann hau ab. Ich habe keine Lust mehr irgendwann mal mehr. Ich habe mir Kyle Rittenhouse angesehen. Kyle Rittenhouse frei, er hat nichts gemacht. Ach, egal. Ich spiele jetzt mal ein bisschen mal Sonnenschein. Weil sieht das eigentlich so, das ist irgendwie geformt wie ein Vogel. Naja, was auch immer. Also auf jeden Fall ziemlich crazy, was passiert ist. Ich hoffe mal, das wird nicht nochmal passieren. Ich hätte aber keine Lust. Aber ja, keine Angst. So, ich meine, ganz ehrlich, ist halt nicht schwer, so, ne? Wenn man sagt, so, geh von meinen Augen raus und mach deine eigene Sache jetzt, dann warum versuchst du dann noch irgendwie die Situation irgendwie zu verschlimmern, indem du das Gegenteil tust und einen dann so provozieren, so. Was denkst du, kommt da am Ende raus? Es wird meistens zu 90% nie gut ausfallen. Aber anscheinend hat dieser Vollidiot das gar nicht bemerkt, irgendwie so. Das ist irgendwie ein Arabers fast wie N-Worts. Ich will jetzt nicht das N-Wort wirklich so sagen, weil ich irgendwie immer so die Angst habe, dass YouTube das irgendwie down nimmt und so. Und dann kann ich mal auf diesen Channel streamen und dann habe ich keine Lust mehr. Ich sage einfach, dieser Araber ist einfach ein richtiger N-Wort, Alter. Das ist kein Unterschied mehr, jetzt mal ehrlich. Ein richtiges N-Wort hat es benommen. Ist auch egal, Leute. So, ich versuche jetzt Ankohits die ganzen Mythen sammeln. Lass mich mal sehen. Ganz kurz mal. Leute, es gibt so ein lustiges Video, was ist mal senden? Ich sende mal dieses Video mal, das ist richtig lustig. Schau dir das mal ganz kurz an. Schicke dir das mal auf WhatsApp. Wo Luigi in Smash kommt. Ja, okay, Leute. Ich muss schon kurz mal nachschauen, was ich bin jetzt da. Okay. Ja, ich finde das aber auch wie, naja, ich meine, keine Ahnung, ich fand es einfach richtig scheiße, so. behindert, so was sie getan haben, so. Was dieser Typ da gemacht hat. So, man traut sich das nicht nochmal, sonst gibt es riesigen fetten Ärger, so. Weil danach, ich habe auch gesagt, dass es danach wieder passiert, wenn wir jetzt die Polizei anrufen mit dem Videobeweis. So kann der Typ nichts mehr wirklich mal machen, so. Man muss dann Fehler in die Hand halten, nicht mit dem Halsschmerzen. Ja. Ich frage mich, wieso man die Münzen sammeln wirklich. Das wird auf jeden Fall sehr schwer sein. Anscheinend kann man hier die 100 Münzen solches sammeln, habe ich gesehen irgendwie, aber ich denke nicht, dass es irgendwie möglich ist. Hä? Das ist scheiße. Das hat auch was gebracht. Warum macht das nicht mit Wasser, Mann? Das Ding ist nutzlos, ey. Hallo, sag mal, was machst du? Das ist mit Wasser. Ey, das ist ein Scheiß. Mann, ey. Ja, okay, das Sniper, das ist doch gar nicht möglich. Mann. Ah, was denn die Münze? Jetzt schlag mich doch dahin. Okay, es geht mir nicht. Shopping. So. Gut, das ist in jeder verdammten Welt 30 Euro Münzen. 30. Das ist schon viel. Schade, dass die Daumen mich nicht gezählt haben, aber naja. Schau mal, ja.
Du weißt, die Pizza ist auf dem Tisch, ja? Nach 1 Minute fahren die Pizza auf dem Tisch.
Naja.
Auf dem Tisch, ja? Tschüss, du Pizza.
Ja.
Arre, Digga, haben wir wieder. Wir sind
Hä? Ja, klar, und das, der große gibt nur einen Münzen. Diese Viecher sind echt nervig. Hä, warum denn? Das ist doch ein... Aber geh doch nach oben, Alter. So. Das hält mich als Dings. Hä? Wie soll man das denn hinbekommen? Das ist so scheiße, Mann. Das war das doch gewesen. Ich hab keine Lust mehr, Mann. Sie ist sonst Arsch. wie soll das funktionieren? Das geht doch gar nicht. Diese scheiß Blumen, Alter, die gehen sofort weg. Jetzt, Alter, endlich, Mann. Was? Viele Münzen müssten uns jetzt eigentlich nicht mal fehlen. Uns fehlen ungefähr noch 13 Münzen. Geschafft, okay. Gut, so hart war das ehrlich gesagt jetzt hier nicht. Ich denke, jede einzelne Münze muss man nicht sagen, es gibt aber jetzt. Ja, ich denke, man braucht ungefähr 100 jeweils. wie gesagt, Leute, 100 Wochen ungefähr.
Hey, dabei Pixel ist nicht immer laut, das hat das nicht, das kann auch gar nicht beweisen. Hey, dabei Pixel ist nicht immer laut, das hat das nicht, das kann auch gar nicht beweisen.
Mhm. Keine Ahnung, was du gesagt hast. Oh, ich habe 64 blaue Münzen. 64 blaue Münzen. Okay, dann haben wir die 100 Münzen hier gesammelt und gehen wir weiter. Wir müssen sowieso immer mal das die blauen Münzen nochmal sammeln. Halt, es gibt 30 blaue Münzen in der Welt. Also ja, ziemlich viel. Lass mal kurz schauen, wo das aus ist. Hey. Hier kann man halt die besten Münzen sammeln. So in der anderen Welt war das jetzt nicht so ein Problem. Das hier ein Problem ist. Müssen wir mal schauen. schaurige Realität von die schaurige Realität von Nigma. Ist hier oben was? In diesem super Siegerdokument sollte man auch durchgehen, weil hier gibt es auch immer ziemlich viele Münzen. So, ja. Da kann man nicht durch wie in Kästen, schön, was auch immer. Also wie man sieht, hier gibt es sehr, sehr viele Münzen, also immer schön. Denken muss ich immer so, wo geht Mario hin? Ich treffe. Ja, okay, natürlich, Alter. Ich muss sagen, er kann nicht treffen, aber er kann töten. Warum kann ich nicht dieses scheiß Ding greifen? Warum ist denn das so schwer? Stecke ich jetzt hier fest? Ja, greif doch, Mann, ich hab keine Lust. Wirklich, das ist doch mal schwer, das zu greifen, mal ehrlich. Nein! Ach, ist mir egal. Okay, dann nicht. So, das kann man nicht wegmachen. Okay. Uh. Wow. Da gibt es sehr viele Dings, die muss ich nehmen. Warum habe ich so ein Problem, dass das nicht klappen wird? Warum gehst du dann nach unten? Ja, natürlich. Ja, uns fehlen noch 35 Münzen. Ist es eigentlich relevant, in welcher Mission man die Sterne sammelt? Eigentlich nicht so.
We are back in the characters as before with the jury absent.
Oh mein Gott, der Karettenhaus schön startet wieder.
What's up?
Point. The defense is going to be making a motion for a mistrial. However, that motion is going to be requested with prejudice. I'm aware that the court's aware that normally a defense motion for a mistrial does not preclude a retrial.
Hallo.
There are exceptions to that. And the case that I am drawing this from is Day versus State. It's 76 with second 588. And what it says is, an exception to this rule exists where a defendant's motion is necessitated by prosecutorial impropriety designed to avoid an acquittal. Now, what has happened in this morning was two times. The state had commented on Mr. Rittenhouse's right to remain silent. The first time he was admonished by the court. The second time the court had the jury leave and re-admonished him on that. Prior to Mr. Rittenhouse testifying, this court addressed various things, but with the lawyers. You had cited various statutes, and then you had asked if anything would be coming up on, for example, I think 90608. One of the other things you addressed was 90404. And you had said that based on the information that had come out at the trial, nothing had changed as it relates to the lawyer. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Binger stated, and we looked it up, previously, he said to Mr. Rittenhouse, previously, you wish to have your aid someone's property. In violation not only of the prior ruling that you had made, but the ruling that very day, that very morning. It appears to be that there are two really elements the court must consider when making a determination on a mistrial for what amounts to prosecutorial overreaching. And the first one
Oha, du scheiß Monster.
in the sense of a culpable state of mind, in the nature of awareness that his activity would be prejudicial to the defendant.
Okay.
That's clearly aware of that. You had warned him, you had told him prior to Mr. Rittenhouse testifying that these things, certainly the 90404 was off limits. You had warned him about the infringement on the constitutional right to remain silent. He did it again. The second one, I think, requires some action by the court in terms of a finding. The second one says the prosecutor's actions was designed another chance to convict. That is, to provoke a mistrial in order to get another kick at the cat because the first trial is going badly, or to prejudice the defendant's rights to successfully complete the criminal confrontation at the first trial. Now, the case that I had cited is a Kenosha case, State versus Coping.
Opening?
Yep. 100 with second, 700.
COEENING.
Yes, sir. In that case, the court didn't make findings regarding my role to sit here and say who's winning. I don't think that's necessarily what I'm supposed to do. But I think the court has to make some findings as it relates to the bad faith on the part of the prosecutor. That the actions
Warum bist du da durchgegangen?
were done in bad faith. Then I think both elements for mistrial with prejudice have been met. And I think under the circumstances, based on what I've put forth on the record, I would certainly ask the court to consider those. With prejudice. Thank you.
Thank you. State.
I would like an opportunity to respond to this.
So.
At first
So
blush, though, and I reserve the right to present case law and additional sites to the court. But I do want to point out for the record that the defendant has presented interviews to at least one media source and at least one online source.
Ja, was soll ich denn da tun, ey? Ich bin doch halt
There
gesprungen.
have been questions about that night. There have been questions about what he did, things like that. He has decided, probably on the advice of counsel in those circumstances,
Kai
not
Rittenhouse.
to give a statement in the media about what happened. But he is talking about his family life, he's talking about
Nichts
his
ist
friends, he's
passiert,
talking
meine
about
Güte.
the circumstances of the case, he's talking about how it's
Ja, das
affected
Ding
him, things like
dann.
that. So my point in asking those questions was, you have agreed to talk to the media, you've agreed to talk about yourself, you've agreed to give interviews, but until now, this is the first time you're explaining your actions. And so I wasn't referring to his in-custody statements. In fact, I never asked either detective about what the defendant told him. He actually starts to tell them some things, and then he says he wants a lawyer, and they stop him. And they Mirandize him first, by the way.
Nein.
He starts to tell them some things, and he says, but I want to talk to my lawyer, and they're like, okay, we're done. So I'm not referring to that. I didn't ask any questions of the detectives about that. But since this, the defendant has spoken to the media. He has talked about his life, circumstances related to this case. He just hasn't given his exact version
Oh
of
mein
events.
Gott.
So his voluntary discussion to speak to the media has nothing to do with
Die Mission
his
ist nervig, ey.
That is his own decision. And if he's going to pick and choose what he wants to talk about in those voluntary interviews with the media, then it
Lass Kai Rittenhouse in Ruhe.
doesn't implicate his Miranda rights, it doesn't implicate the Fifth Amendment. He's making his own voluntary choice.
Well, wait a minute. You don't think he could give an interview about his awards he won in high school, or his demerits that he got, or his and about his sports activities and his swimming and that, and he declined to answer any questions about the incident in question, and that somehow a waiver of his right of silence?
I think he's doing more than that, Your Honor, in these interviews.
I don't know. I knew nothing about them. I never, I haven't seen all. I haven't seen probably 1% of all the evidence, which is pretty typical, as you know. So I have no way of knowing. And you have some interviews that he gave to media or to whatever.
Yeah, there's an interview that we're looking at on our computer right now from the Washington Post, where he talks about. I know there's one. I think it's either the New Yorker or the GQ magazine, where he speaks to the reporters also. And he doesn't go into specific details about what happened that night, but it's not like it's talking about school or swimming or things
Well,
like that.
no. Don't leave it at. He doesn't go into specific details. I mean, it's certainly there could be a waiver, but a very modest discussion about the activities of that night. And if you're suggesting that occurred, that could make a big difference.
Wieso schaffe ich das einfach nicht, Alter? Warum geht das auf dieser freaking
Even
Plattform,
a
Mann?
small discussion on his part of the night in question might be a full
Das
waiver. I
nervt
don't know,
mich, ey.
but I won't know until I see it. But why don't you make copies of it and
Let's do it.
well, we won't do it right now. I do agree with you that this is not something that I would want to do. Sitting here without giving you an opportunity. Although I would be interested in your preliminary response to the excluded evidence that you touched on after having been told not to, or having been told that I was confirmed with higher rulings.
I do want to just point out right now, we've got it on the screen. This is a Washington Post article, and there's reference to an interview that he says, the defendant says he did not regret having his gun because, quote, I would have died that night if I didn't, end quote. That's a direct quote from the defendant to the media about that night.
Stimmt, da war es noch
that?
Die, N-Wort, die, sagt er sogar.
I don't care about that.
And I believe it's a telephone interview. I don't know anything about circumstances of that. I'd have to read the article.
And what about the you're asking questions about excluded evidence?
Your Honor, we went over this.
Your
earlier.
Honor.
I don't want to repeat myself, because you heard me, but I can just summarize. I did hear you talk about that evidence this morning before testimony.
Komm doch.
The defendant then took the stand. He admitted that he had said to the person in the yellow pants that he had pointed the gun at that person. I have seen that video. It was actually introduced by the defense.
Das will mir noch 2 Münzen fehlen.
And there's this person who confronts the defendant, accuses him of this. Frankly,
Ich weiß noch, wo ein paar Münzen sind.
let's hear the defendant's reaction. I thought it was someone making an accusation and then the defendant walking away as if trying to avoid confrontation. I was surprised to hear the defendant admit in his testimony, on direct, by his attorney, that yes, I did tell that person that I had pointed the gun at them. He explained then that he was joking when he said that. The jury can evaluate that. It goes to his credibility, it goes to whether or not he's telling the truth, it goes to his decision making. That is, again, this is an incident that occurred that night, so it's not something that happened separate in time. Presumably happened a few minutes before. But like I said, I was taken aback by the defendant admitting that he had said to this person, yes, I pointed a gun at you. And I think it's fair to say that watching that video, that person, believes strongly that this happened. The defendant is telling him it happened. Now the defendant today is giving us a different version and saying, oh, I made it, I was joking, I was just kidding that guy or whatever. I'd like to probe what he said to that person. I'd like to probe what his motivations were, etc. I'd like to probe whether, in fact, he really did do that. And I think that changes the equation with regard to the CBS video that was the subject of the other acts motion. Because in my mind, it is very similar. And I know we've disagreed on that, and I'm not going to belabor the point, Your Honor, but that was where I was coming from, was there's been a change in the testimony of the defendant today that I think makes that evidence, it's admissible and much more relevant than it already was, and I thought it was already relevant. Court is, I do want to be clear
So
also,
I'm just here on the sidelines, just
well,
yeah, I had made a ruling that the evidence wasn't coming in, and you decided that it was.
If I could just respond to that briefly, Your Honor, I was about to say, I did not interpret your ruling as an absolute. We've had 3 state motions in there. There was one in which we asked the court to introduce evidence that the defendant was at Pudgy's bar with Proud Boys, and you were clear, that is not coming. There was
Don't get into other subjects. Come on, what you're telling me, you're an experienced trial attorney, and you're telling me that when the judge says, I'm excluding this, you just take it upon yourself to put it in because you think that you found a way around it? Come on.
If I may finish, Your Honor, I was about to say.
Alter, der wird aber richtig weggeschmissen, der Typ.
Other acts motions. was
Leute, ich musste mir das anschauen, weil das ist wichtig, Alter.
that some things were absolutely out, and then you left the door
Der
open.
richtig zerfetzt gerade.
So I saw that distinction and I thought to myself, clearly I know this is out, but you left the door open on other things. So I didn't interpret your ruling as this is absolutely never coming in. And I have practiced before you. I have filed other motions before you. Your practice oftentimes is to reserve ruling on those until you see the evidence. And I think you even said something to that effect.
I undoubtedly did.
So
Ich werde gleich weiter Marvel spielen, aber
this
das
is my good faith
ist
explanation to you. And if you want to yell at me, you can. My good faith feeling this morning after watching that testimony was you had left the door open a little bit. Now we had something new, and I was going to probe it.
I don't believe you. There better not be another incident. I'll take the motion under advisement. And you can respond.
Oh my god, the video.
When you say that you were acting in good faith, I don't believe that, okay? Let's proceed. Everybody in good faith. All right. Would you come up, please, Mr. Jones?
I do have,
Yeah.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I do have another item that I want to raise before the jury comes in and raise it with you. There was another action motion with regard to the defendant being at Pudgy's bar after a conference in January in which he poses for selfies wearing a shirt that says free as fuck. I would like to ask the defendant.
Fuck you, Alter, was nicht so, wenn du bist, Alter. Ich hab aus nichts gemacht.
With members of the public wearing that shirt. I do
Du
not
musst selbst werden einer von diesen Menschen, die es ihm angerannt haben. Also, doch keine Ahnung, Alter. Der soll mal aufgeben, Alter. Guck mal den Judge an, der sagt, der denkst so, oh, wie mal wer noch reden. Halt doch einmal den Mund, sagt er. Die Mutter von Karin aus, die Klappen so lächeln, sagst du, ja, wir haben es in der Tasche. Boah, Alter, wie kann er so viel auf Nerd tun, wer er will, aber er wird nicht gewinnen, fertig. Ja, hier waren das Heulen.
So, as I said, I want to use the photograph. I'm not going to talk about any of the people or who they were from. In fact, the photograph I'm going to use has actually got their faces blocked out, so we won't see any of the people in the crowd. We'll just see the defendant standing with a group of people for a selfie with that shirt on. That's as far as I want to go.
Ding, 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 ding.
Nobody got an opportunity. First of all, you've made a ruling on it, and it was clear prior to him testifying. So part of this is, would we have raised it? Would we have brought it up if we would have known that it was going to be coming in? We have done there's been nothing to open this door, Judge. Nothing that has been said to open the door about what happened 4 months after this is relevant in any way to what happened that evening. That is part of what the court had ruled. You had said 4 months after, I don't see how that goes to any 90404 type of admissible evidence. So my argument is, A, you ruled on it previous to him testifying. You confirmed your ruling, which you had made previously, where Mr. Binger just said you had shut the door on it. So apparently,
Welche Tür wurde denn
he doesn't
zugeschlossen?
believe
Was
a door
geht
that
denn
is
da?
shut should stay shut. However, now he's asking that something be admitted that, to be fair, this should have been brought up sooner. This jury, I did the voir dire, I would have voir dired on an issue of whether or not they heard it, saw it, were aware of it. How they felt about it, whether it had an impact on their ability to be fair in the case. We never went there because of your prior ruling. So there's nothing that's opened this door, and I don't think it's relevant, something that happened 4 months later. He talks about indifference to human life.
4 Monate ist es her, ja, niemand interessiert es mehr.
There's nothing that's relevant about that. You've already made your ruling, I asked.
Es ist echt nicht mehr relevant, wirklich. Und 3 davon waren ekelhafte Menschen. Einer war ein Pedo, der andere war der, keine Ahnung. Der andere hat auch andere 3 Menschen getötet. Krimineller. Als scheiß Doppel gemacht, ja.
If he were on trial, for behaving in a very offensive way, then I could see the purpose. But an incident that occurred 4 months after the incidents in question, I don't see how the jury can work with that in reaching any conclusions about the issues in this case.
First of all, Your Honor, we have introduced evidence that the defendant had a slogan on his TikTok page, "Grow up, just trying to be famous." This case is made him famous, and he's posing for selfies as a result. One of our theories of this case is that his behavior that night was intended to gain attention, to be famous, and he's...
Guck mal, Kai Rittenhaus und dachte, denkst du, Alter, boah, das ist doch egal, was der sagt. Sei doch mal still, du Typi.
Confronting protesters that he knows are hostile, and I think are exclusively bad judgment. So the jury can make that decision. The jury can do what weight they want to this evidence, but it's moments after he has a court appearance here. He's out on bond in this case when he decides to do this behavior, and nobody made him do it. Nobody forced him to go to the bar. Nobody forced him to wear the shirt. Nobody forced him to pose for selfies. It's his own decision making.
When I made reference to exquisitely poor judgment, I was.
Die konnten nicht gegen den Judge, also gibt's auch. Gibt einfach auf. Man sieht auch, dass die Judge in Kai Rittenhaus Seite ist. Nicht nur eure Seite, also warum diskutiert ihr noch? Warum argumentiert ihr so? Nichts wird passieren mehr. Kai Rittenhaus wird freigelassen!
And we don't let it into people's trials on unrelated matters. So I wasn't referring to his having had good or bad judgment on the day in question. That's a legitimate inquiry, and you're being allowed to present a lot of evidence on that subject. And the jury is going to be instructed in some of the elements.
Genau, Alter, es ist gegen die Regeln, fertig. Wenn die Regeln jetzt so sagen, die Regeln ist so. Für die nicht irgendwie durch die Regeln umgehen, für die nicht.
So I'm not seeing it, and I don't want to waste any more time with it. I don't think that I've ruled before it's not admissible, and I have heard nothing to change my mind about that.
It was sought to be admitted earlier for a different purpose, Your Honor. It was sought to be admitted earlier for a different purpose than it is today. The court ruled that it can't be admitted for the prior purpose, but I am seeking to introduce it.
Alter, guck mal einfach an, der einfach an die Chance kommt, diesen Typen.
Okay.
Die sollte mal abhauen. Kai Rittenhaus wird freigelassen! Sei doch mal ruhig, was weiß ich, wie der Typ heißt, Alter. Der soll mal seinen Mund haben. Mit dem noch rausgeschmissen. Man soll es immer mehr und mehr, umso mehr und mehr reden, umso schlechter wird es für ihn. Der Fall wird immer schlechter für ihn. Ich will am besten einfach still sein, akzeptiert, dass er verloren hat. Binger oder so heißt dieser Typ. Binger vor allem, sein Name sagt schon eigentlich alles aus. Binger ist ein hässiger, dieser Hurensohn, der versuchen, Krediten aus jedem einzelnen Mittel in den Knast zu stecken. Der wird schon sehen. Guck das mal an, Alter. Schatz, denke ich so, Alter, was soll ich schon machen? Er guckt sich das so an und sagt so, naja, vieles davon ist nicht mal, stimmt nicht mal einmal. Oder der Typ übertreibt einfach so. Er stellt zu viele Fragen einfach. Versucht ihn irgendwie reinzulegen, um ihn, keine Ahnung, irgendwelche Falschvorstellungen zu geben, damit er am Ende dann irgendwelche falschen Sachen sagt, der Krankenhaus. Keine Ahnung. Das war richtig ekelhaft so. Ja, Binger hat halt nicht ein Skateboard in der Fresse gedrückt zu bekommen, weil das ist nicht mehr normal, das ist mir ehrlich. Das ist wirklich nicht mehr normal. Geh mal du. HR. Guter Judge, muss ich auf jeden Fall sagen. Dann wann wird es jetzt endlich gesagt, ob kein Redros freigelassen wird? Das ist doch jetzt dann wirklich mal Zeit. Ich meine, ich wurde doch irgendwie fast über alles gesprochen. Lass mal auf freien fertig ist.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rittenhouse.
Oh mein Gott, jetzt sind wir hier.
You testified earlier that there were times that evening when Mr. Rosenbaum had threatened. Is that right?
Yes.
Na.
And you described him as wearing a red shirt with a blue bandana. Is that correct?
At certain times.
When he threatened you, that's what he was wearing?
I believe the first time he threatened me, he was wearing a red shirt with a blue bandana. The second time, he had it wrapped around his face.
Had what wrapped around his face?
His t-shirt.
So he wasn't wearing a shirt the second time around?
Correct.
And you indicated at one point you thought he had a chain in his hand?
I believe so.
When he made the threat to you with the red shirt on and the blue bandana, did he have the chain in his hand?
I think one of the times he did.
Okay. So which
Was
of
wird
the
jetzt
times was
beschrieben?
it?
Beschreibt ihr jetzt die Opfer, Leute, die nachgerannt sind und ihn töten wollten oder was?
I think it was the time
Weil
when
die sind sowieso alle verletzt.
he
Wen
was
interessiert, was für
threatening
Kleidung
to
die
cut people's
anhaben?
hearts out.
Yeah, I don't need to know the threat, I just need to know which time it was. Was it the first
Das
time?
sind
or the
irre
second?
Fragen, die er stellt,
Second
Alter. Da
time.
kriegt man
The
richtig
second
Schmerzen im
What
Kopf.
was he wearing the second time?
He was masked. Well, the shirt wrapped around his face.
And he didn't have a shirt on his torso.
Correct.
Ich muss das mal ein bisschen lauter
And you
machen.
could see when he didn't have a shirt on his torso that he didn't have any gun tucked in his waistband, correct?
I wasn't paying attention to that. I was behind Joanne Fiedler. I was.
Junge, er musste wegrennen von den Leuten, Alter. Er konnte uns alles sehen im Moment. Die sind falsch.
By 10, 15 feet. I'm not really certain.
But you were close enough to hear the words out of his mouth.
Yes.
And you took
Junge,
that
der
as
hat
a
gesagt,
threat.
shoot me, N-Wort, shoot me, N-Wort.
The
Er hat
first
gesagt,
one where
er ist
he
ein
said if I
Pio
catch you
gewesen,
alone,
an
I'll
dem
kill
interessiert
you.
ist, er
I took
verreckt
that as
ist
a
gut, dass er
threat to the
gestorben
person. The
ist.
second time I
Also,
took that as a
er hat
threat to
gefragt, dass
the
wir ihn erschießen sehen soll.
Can we have that,
Er hat danach gefragt,
photo
wer jetzt
of
so
our
wie normal.
38 up on the screen, please?
Genau, es war verfickt mal ein alt älterer Mann, der, keine Ahnung, 20-Jährigen überregiert hat. Kann man was machen? Klar muss man sich sogar selbst werden. Klar, wenn man da einer angreift, die schießt mit einer Waffe den ab, dann was soll man denn da machen? Ich meine, ich hätte das jetzt nicht getan wahrscheinlich.
I
Ich hätte wahrscheinlich einen Warnschuss daneben gemacht und hätte ihn dann weggehauen mit der Waffe und den abgehauen.
Carrying the plastic bag, correct?
Yes.
Is that the way he looked when he made the first threat to you?
Ja, so sah er aus. Guck mal, was für Bluse er aussah.
And he was carrying that plastic bag with him when he made that threat too.
Er ist ein
correct?
Pedo, Junge! Wie kann man denn da wirklich eine Sympathie haben? Das war ehrlich. So ekelhaft.
Close. I couldn't give you an exact estimate, but he was close. Less than
Ja, er hat
5
danach
feet.
gefragt, den abschießen gehen soll. Und darüber wird noch diskutiert, das ist doch nicht mal normal.
I'd say about the same, if not a little bit closer.
And you were
Was? Oh Mann! Warum stürzt das jetzt ab, Alter? Warum stürzt jetzt ab, du Huso? Nein, bitte, ich muss es mir ansehen. Was hast du gemacht? Okay, warte mal kurz. Nein. Nein, 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 nein. Nein, 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 nein. Nein. Okay, Gott sei Dank. Jetzt ladert das doch mal.
That's why I asked the question the way I did. He never touched your body that night.
Ich verstehe immer manchmal immer dieses Abschmieren, das geht voll auf die Nerven, ey.
And touch me physically.
And neither the first or the second time did he run at you or charge at you or anything like that, did he?
He didn't chase me.
Ja, hat ihn gejagt, wie jeder andere ihn gejagt hat.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And other than the chain that you've described, at no point in the evening did you ever see Joseph Rosenbaum with any other type of weapon, correct?
Not that I saw.
You never saw him with a gun?
Correct.
Never saw him with a knife?
Correct.
Never saw him with a bat?
Correct.
Never saw him with a club?
Correct.
Korrekt. Was ist dein Problem, Herr Judge?
How far apart in time were these two threats that you say, Mr. Rosenbaum?
Ach, sei doch still! Natürlich geht mir sowas von auf die Nerven, das ist ja unglaublich. Ich stelle irgendwelche Fragen und dann kannst du dann noch in anderen Typen genau aussagen, was sie anhatten, wie die angegriffen haben, was weiß ich was, wen interessiert das, ey?
And both of those threats occurred while you were on the 59th Street property?
The second threat happened at the corner, and the first threat happened towards Ruther Central High School.
Okay, could you use that laser pointer and point out on that map where the first threat occurred?
The first threat happened right here at the in front of the
Was
building.
macht denn der da,
So you're
Alter?
pointing
Kann
at
mir
a
das Stück
location that is
kontrollieren?
by the 59th Street
Kann mir das
car
Stück
source
zeigen,
on the
Alter?
south side
Also,
of that property, along the building.
also immer diesen Stift, mal diesen Mund, mal diesen Typen mal zumachen.
Would that be accurate?
Yes.
And you said there was a second threat within an hour after
Dann
that.
kann man schon mit diesem Stift den Bienen steuern.
Where was that threat at?
It was
Den Bienen kann man steuern mit dem Stift. Guckt euch mal an.
like on the other
So,
side
es ist
of
ein
the property,
Laserpunkt, kann auch sein.
towards Ruther Central.
Laser,
More towards the
oder Laserlinie, wo du
northeast
dann
corner of that
Bescheid
same property.
nicht.
Correct.
Korrekt.
You were still on the car source property when that
Ja, das
second
ist doch
threat was
egal, am
occurred.
Ende sind sie ihm nachgefolgt und haben ihn gejagt. Ist doch egal, wo es war. Ob das eine Rolle spielt oder nicht, ist doch scheißegal. Dieser Typ, Alter.
Remember
Wenn die wirklich
what
alles
Mr.
wissen,
Rosenbaum
oder?
had said to you later
Schau
on,
dir das Video an, das wirst du doch selber schon sehen.
confronting you at the 63rd Street car source?
I took a mental picture of his face. When he said those threats, I recognized that was him that said that when he started chasing me.
So when you are running away from him at the 63rd Street car source, you're thinking to yourself, this is the guy who had made a threat to me earlier. Is that fair to say?
I was thinking this is the guy that said if he catches me alone, he'll.
The reason I asked Mr. Rittenhouse is, how did you know it was the same guy when he's changed the way he looks?
His
Ja, natürlich,
appearance,
Alter.
his short,
Natürlich weiß man, dass es
his
das
height.
derselbe Typ ist.
But in both of
Ja,
those
natürlich, er hat sich anders
instances,
umgezogen.
covering
Und
his
sie so
face,
tun, als wäre er ein anderer,
and,
aber es ist trotzdem derselbe Person. Derselbe Face, man, doch von derselben Person.
correct?
He was wearing the red shirt when he chased me around his head.
So
Ja,
you
so
remember
nice,
that
oder
from the
so
second.
schön sein Gesicht schützen, damit niemand sieht, dass er bestimmte Leute
This is the
verärgert
same guy.
und
Yes.
harassed.
So, when you eventually were getting to the point where you're going down to the 63rd Street car
Also
source,
die Leute da hinten,
right
die
before
pennen schon.
the shooting, you recognized him as you're following him down the street, didn't you?
I didn't follow Mr. Rosenbaum down the street.
He was in front of you. You know that now, right?
I know that now.
But you didn't see him ahead of you as you're walking down there that night.
No, it was dark out.
But you, at some point, as you get
Es
close
waren
to the
überall
63rd
Menschen, Alter, wo sie mal die
Street,
Fassung haben, wer einen Wert verfolgt hat.
right?
Towards the fire that in the Duramax.
And Mr. Rosenbaum is running ahead of you, isn't
Oh, wo ist ein Baum, Alter, der ist ein Pedo, Alter.
So.
Der Typ ist sowas
he?
von
But you
kaputt
decided
im Kopf,
you needed
dass
to
er,
run because
dass
the
er ein
fire
Pedo
was
hier
burning.
gerade irgendwie
Ja.
in Schutz nimmt.
Why? What was so urgent?
It was a fire.
There's fires all over the place, so?
Genau, wo die alle verdient haben zu brennen.
Put it out.
We'll get back to that in a second. You indicated that while you were at the 59th Street car source, you said you put up.
Ja, Feuer sind sowas von schlimm auf jeden Fall auch, ne?
Did you hear Joanne Fiedler's testimony?
Und darüber Sorgen machen muss jetzt.
Somebody had put some sort of flammable liquid.
Da war ein Feuer, kann ja nur kein Rittenhaus sein, ne? Kann kein anderer gewesen sein. Nee, die anderen 10.000 Menschen, die da waren, irgendwas zerstört haben, gerannt haben, Scheiße gemacht haben, nee, die haben nichts getan. Keine Schuld. Es war alles kalt, er hat alles organisiert, hat alles in Brand gesetzt, hat die ganze Stadt in Schutt und Asche gelegt, alles voll kein Rittenhaus gewesen.
Some other group, some other people put that out before you even got there, correct? Why did you feel that you should go around off the 59th Street car source property and put out fires?
Ja, warum denn nicht? Junge, warum wir wissen, auf einer war der Feuer gelegt hat. Es waren noch andere Tausende, die Feuer gelegt haben. Viel schlimmer. Warum kriegen die denn keinen Ärger? Ey, die haben aber auch eine richtig scheiß Connection, ne? Das ist das Bambus, was sie dort haben. Es kann sein, dass diese scheiß innen Kraftwerk, was sich aber abkackt.
The community that I was part of, yes.
And you felt like it was appropriate for you to take matters into your own hands to put out fires, for example.
Feuer, auf jeden Fall sowas schon schlimm, ne? Man wirft ein Feuer und macht es weg, fertig. Es brennt in einer kleinen Ecke. Nicht so schlimm wie die anderen, die mit Flaschen, was weiß ich was, gebaut haben, so die Bullen. Aber ein Feuer, das ist das Problem, ne?
I was walking around and asking people if they needed medical help.
So you felt that you wanted to go out and help people, help protect people, help people feel better, treat people.
Ja, und dann, was passiert dann sind irgendwie so ordentliche Mädchen, die halt wollten, keine Ahnung, wehtun. Und dann muss ja die Wahrheit rausholen. Die Sätze schützen, Mann.
Normally, yes.
Selbst die Opfer, Alter, die abgeschossen wurden, da wenigstens dass er die Krankenwagen anrufen soll. Man wollte ja nicht die abschießen, man musste es ja tun, Alter, also er hatte ja keine andere Wahl. Und überall Menschen kommen, die ihn wegboxen wollen, was soll er dann tun?
And that's exactly how these shootings happen. So.
Well, that's what the trial is about.
Which is why
go ahead.
Der Typ muss Langeweile haben, Alter. Das ist genauso auseinanderzunehmen. 6 Tage schon. 7 sogar.
We would, if there's a fire, if there's somebody committing a crime, you call 911, right?
Normally, yes.
You didn't feel like.
Ja, warum muss er 911 anrufen? Warum ist kein anderer, der es getan hat, ne? Warum muss der Erste sein, Alter? Immer RRR. Was ist das für eine Scheiße? Der Typ denkt, er war der Einzige, der alles da anders hat. Er hat nur den Typen gesehen, nur das Rittenhaus gesehen. Alle anderen waren irrelevant, oder was?
Large scale property fires on the prior nights, correct?
Yes.
On the night of August 25th.
Ey, das ist echt ein Problem für den Typen.
We just had a couple dumpsters, smaller things, right?
That I saw, yes. That I saw, yes.
But regardless of how big the fire is, you felt that night that calling 911 was not an option, correct?
Junge, was soll er denn tun, Alter? In der Situation, in dem Moment, wenn dann noch andere Menschen ihn herjagen, andere Scheiße passiert, wie soll man dann Polizei anrufen? Er wusste, was passiert, Alter, aber er musste dagegen das unternehmen. Und warum er hätte, es gibt andere, die es machen können, und warum haben die es nicht getan? Und mit die Fragen ist die andere mal gestellt.
Help people, yes.
Please move that microphone a little closer so we can make sure we hear everything you say. It can adjust it if you need to move it a little closer. Thank you.
Oh ja, genau, Alter. Es tut mir extra so, als würde ich ihn nicht verstehen.
How's the temperature? How many are comfortable the way things are?
Guck mal, wie dieser lächerliche Spaß lächelt. Ich hab ihn. Ich werde ihn in den Knast stecken, weil er Feuer angezündet hat mit einem privaten Grundstück. Ich war nur in Ärger, wie sie hat die Polizei angerufen. Was ist nicht schön? Die andere ist doch egal, was die anderen machen. Hauptsache er muss Grüße angerufen haben.
Correct?
I had an AR-15, yes.
Other than that,
Ein
you
AR-15
had no other weapons or devices that you
Ich würde das irgendwie irrelevant sein. Ich würde egal, wie viele Waffen wir hatten.
correct?
Yes.
There's an interview in which
Die
you
anderen
say
hatten
you're
auch Waffen gehabt, wie ein Schlagstock oder was weiß ich was.
Do you recall that?
I do.
Einer hat so eine Glocke 18 in der Hand gehabt und wollte den
Response to
Terrin
one
noch
of your
schießen.
attorney's questions that there was no friction with the protesters that night. Did I understand you correctly?
By friction, you mean?
Well, I'm using your words, sir. I heard you say, in response to your attorney's question, that there was no friction with the protesters that night. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
And you're describing what you observed when you were at the 59th Street car source. Fair enough?
Yes.
So, based on your several hours at that location, it seemed to you as though the crowd of, however you want to describe them, they've been called rioters, protesters,
Ich fand alle Art von ekelhaften Menschen dort ihn gejagt haben.
things were fine. No tension, no friction, no nothing. Fair to say?
Nee, nichts war fein
For the
gewesen.
most
Alles
part,
war
the
fein,
Mr.
bevor die dann
Rosenbaum.
angefangen haben, keine Redner
He was the only one.
zu jagen.
Threatened, yes.
That you
Antifa, Alter, Antifa ist so scheiße,
Can we
ey.
please play
Die wollen so tun, als wäre
exhibit
alles,
number
als würden die eine neue Welt machen, so, dass jeder Mensch gleich ist und niemand diskriminiert werden soll. Aber dann schlagen die ihnen damit nicht zustimmen. Gewalttätige, ekelhafte Monsterschweine. Kein Redner aus denkt sich so, ja, ist doch egal, was für Menschen da waren, die haben mich gejagt. Dieser Blick, ey. Und dann noch der Typ, ey, der denkt sich so, oh mein Gott, mit was haben die zu tun? Boah, Alter, der Typ ist so hässlich, ne? Was machen die da jetzt? Oh, er schielt wieder, er schummelt wieder. Fragt wieder irgendeinen nach irgendwas.
Can you please play from this point?
Diese Grafik ist so grauenhaft, als ob er 27p
And
mehr.
militia
Und man sieht nix.
are up there. Where? Oh, dumpster fire.
Guck dich mal an, Alter. So
Hey,
viele.
it's like the year, man. Yeah, right. If 2020 is a blunt, it would be just a fucking stem.
It would just be stem and seed, man.
Links ist ein Stück
I could use
Scheiße.
a doobie right now.
Guck mal, die hatten diese Teile in der Hand gehabt, Alter. Damit kann man einen töten, Junge. Wenn es gegen den Kopf bekommt.
Hey, 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 hey. Reel in. Reel in. Reel in. Don't cause problems when there's none here.
Seht ihr, wie die machen die Probleme hier. Die fangen Probleme
Yeah,
an.
that's true. Just stay
Er
on
hat
your
noch
property.
nicht einfach so angefangen, die zu diesen
Just
oder
avoid
irgendein zu
There's
publizieren.
way too many of them there.
Diese Menschen haben verdient, geschützt zu werden. Guck mal, wie dieses Benehmen ist jetzt mal normal. Wir dürfen nicht in die
I
Straße
have to
rum,
agree with
Alter.
her.
Das ist halt stigmatisieren, das ist nicht mal normal. Oh, seid auch richtig Affen.
I have to
Hauptsache
agree with
irgendwas
her.
rumholen, aber schön filmen, ne? Und ist schön gut ankommen auf ihre Instagram-Accounts.
It's
Das ist
protecting their
cool.
property. One of the guys is an asshole.
I know, I thought they were yelling at them. I was like,
Oh
why?
no, well,
Well, we did because they lit it on
one
fire.
of the guys losing his patience. He should go inside.
Das lassen wir doch mal frei, Alter.
Yeah, if you guys could switch him out. Just somebody's loose cannon. He's got a lot of rage. He says the wrong thing. This whole crowd burns you guys alive. Protect your property. They're respecting that. Just keep it there.
Er hat schon gelacht, ich glaube, er hat sich nur selbst geschützt. Das war Selbstwehrung. So, wie kann man das Knast landen, vor allem wieder nichts getan hat, dann halt auch nicht, ne? Noch schlimmer kann die Grafik ja wohl nicht gehen, oder? Ich kann es auch nicht höher machen, weil das ist schon 27p. Das Internet einfach dort kackt übelst ab. Dass man fast nichts mehr sieht. Jetzt sieht man nur noch Pixels.
Do you think that looks like friction?
A little bit.
And you witnessed that, didn't you?
I didn't witness what Mr.
Oh mein Gott, die Speed viel nach oben.
But you saw the reaction from the crowd, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I wasn't really paying much attention to that.
Would you agree with me that it seems that the crowd was reacting to members of your group going out in the street and trying to interfere with what was going on off your property?
Ja, natürlich, Alter. Hätten die das getan, ey, dann wären die ja nicht so hingerannt, Alter, und wollten nicht viel tun.
Kristan Harris, who made this video, specifically told you to stay on your property and not go out on the street and try and put out fires or interfere with any of that stuff. Just protect your property. Isn't that what he told you?
Nur weil er sagt halt, dass
so.
gehen muss, also Feuer geschmissen. Haben aber jeder andere gemacht. Die dürfen auch nicht so das Revier gehen. Diese private Grundstücke hat trotzdem wieder gemacht.
You headed south towards the 63rd Street car source, right?
Also es stimmt, weil Feuer liegt. Warum zum
you decided to go down there with a fire extinguisher, correct?
Yes.
This is before you shot Mr. Rosenbaum, Mr. Huber, Mr. Grosskreutz, and at the person that was jumping over you, correct?
Yes.
So you knew that this was a crowd that would not react very favorably to you going out there and trying to put out fires or interfere with any of that
Ja, jeder andere das doch auch getan.
I didn't.
Even after that incident, you still didn't have
Also
any
viel
idea
schlimmer,
that this is a
Alter.
crowd that's not going to take it very well.
It seems like they were more mad at the part of him screaming what he screamed after, not putting out the fire. That's
Ja, genau, ey. Das ist das Feuer gewesen, das ein Grund war.
Fuck around and find out, right?
That's what he screamed at them.
After they had just
Lol.
on fire.
Wie er das gesagt hat.
Right. So, what did you interpret
Genau,
that
aber
to?
jeder andere darf auch überall rumklicken, dann passiert nichts, weil die alle in Gruppen sind. Weißt du, alle Antifa, was ist das für eine Scheißgruppe? Aber da alleine so, eine gegen Gruppe, kann man ja nichts tun.
You light stuff on fire, and I'm gonna use my gun.
Ja, erst natürlich, wenn Tausende von Menschen kommen, ja, dann kann er nur machen.
And then withdraw.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it seems to you. You can ask your questions, that's fine, go ahead.
It was shortly after that incident that we just watched where you were interviewed by Richie McGinnis, correct?
Yes.
And you said you've never heard of him, never dealt with him before this night?
I have not.
So why did you talk to him?
He seemed like a nice guy.
Did he introduce himself as from the media?
Was für ein hässlicher Blick. So,
He didn't
natürlich
specifically
redet man mit der
say, hey, I'm
Person,
from the media,
wenn
like,
normal
hey,
ist
you
in dem
wanna do an
Moment
interview?
und das einmal komplett umdreht,
When you heard him ask you to do an interview, you didn't think that meant he's from the media?
No, that's not what I said. I said he didn't specifically say he was from the media.
Okay. But you assumed when he says, I'm going to interview you, that he's from the media, right?
Yes.
And did he tell you he's from the Daily Caller?
He did not.
So you didn't know what media company he worked for?
Correct.
But you agreed to have him interview you on camera, correct?
Yes.
Can we please play exhibit number 16? That one up there?
You're doing out here, obviously you're armed and you're
Da ist, guck. Was hat er jetzt da gemacht?
And then what about these guys up on the roof? Gotcha.
Have your AR-15 to protect yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you indicate that you're going to run out there and treat anyone who needs medical help, correct?
Yes.
Were you going to bring the gun along when you did that?
Yes.
To defend yourself while you're treating someone?
If I needed to defend myself while treating somebody, yes.
If you didn't think there was friction with the crowd, and you're out there trying to help, why did you expect there'd be any danger?
From the previous nights when I saw people being assaulted.
Were they medics? Being assaulted?
I don't know who they were. I know one of them was just trying to put out a fire at his business.
So you saw someone who was trying to put out a fire who got assaulted?
Yes.
But if you're going to help people, why would you expect anyone would try and hurt you?
I don't know. Somebody did try to hurt me, and I was helping people.
Well, you're talking about later on.
Yes.
Okay, but at this moment in time, this is before the shootings.
Yes.
This is before you cross 60th, before you deal with Rosenbaum, Huber, Grosskreutz.
Rosenbaum, Huber!
So at this moment in time, you don't think there's a hostile crowd, you're there to help people, and yet you're going to run out there with the AR-15. I don't understand why you felt that you were going to be in danger if you're out in what you think is a friendly crowd, helping them.
Ja, weil man weiß es in dem Moment ja doch nicht, Alter, dass sie quasi tut auf Deutsch und danach, weil du die nicht zustimmst in die kleinste Sache, dann gehen sie auf dich zu.
So they're not hostile to you and you're going to go help them.
Vor allem freundliche Gruppe, ne? Natürlich, Alter. Die waren geil, Alter. Wenn ihr freundliche Gruppe werden, würden sie einfach attackieren.
If I had to protect myself because somebody attacked me.
Why would you think anybody would do that?
I don't know.
But you clearly planned on it. You were prepared for it. You thought it was going to happen.
No, I didn't.
That's the whole reason you brought the gun, isn't it?
I brought the gun to protect myself.
Exactly. Because you thought, you personally,
Ja,
were going to be in
er
danger.
hat's gedacht und es ist auch passiert, du. Es ist auch passiert. Er wusste, was passieren würde und es ist
You said you were
passiert.
going to bring the gun to protect yourself.
Die Waffe geholt, du Idiot.
So you thought you were going to be in danger, right?
I didn't think I would be put into a situation where I would have to.
Nein, hätte ich auch nicht gewusst. Aber trotzdem muss man eine Waffe mitnehmen, aber
You
weiß
said
man
that the
nie.
people around you on that property and the people up on the roof were there to protect you. That's what you said in the video, right?
Alter, der Typ.
You meant when you go out in the crowd, they're going to protect you, right?
Watch over me, yes.
Watch over and protect you, right?
Yes.
Again, because you expected that if you go out in that crowd to try and provide medical service, you thought you were going to get attacked?
They were to watch me. They were on the roof to watch me, and if somebody was to attack me in their view, they could say, "Hey, Kyle, watch out."
They've got AR-15s.
Yes.
Niemand hat es gesagt, Alter.
We
Es sind
talked
einfach
earlier
alle
about the
gegen ihn
fact that
gewesen.
the AR-15, you can't use deadly force to protect the building, right?
Correct.
The AR-15 was to protect you, right? That's what you just said.
Not the AR-15. I said they could shout down to me and be like, "Hey, Kyle, watch out."
So they're just carrying around the AR-15s for no reason?
I don't know why they're carrying around the AR-15.
Oder das wissen wahrscheinlich auch, weil die auch wahrscheinlich als Schutz, wenn andere kommen, werden die auch abgeschossen.
Can we play exhibit? This is the end. At the end of this video is where you invite Mr. McGinnis to follow you and Ryan Balch, correct?
Yes.
And you invited him to do that because you want, I think you said when your attorney was asking you questions, that you wanted him to film you while you were out in the crowd doing your thing. Fair?
Yeah, I said it was okay for him to film me.
Let's play Exhibit 17, please.
Boah, wen interessiert's, ey.
Just asked you. So you're a certified EMT.
Also das ist schon nicht gesagt, einfach Hallo, eine Waffe in der Hand.
Yes. That was a lie, correct?
I'm not an EMT.
You're not a certified EMT. You're not an EMT.
Pampenschlepper, die große Scheiße.
Correct?
Yes.
So you lied to him, correct?
I told him I was an EMT, but I wasn't.
And you knew you were being interviewed by someone in the media when you told that lie, didn't you?
Yes.
Wen interessiert's uns? Als würde die Medien und die News nicht 100-mal lügen. Irgendwelche Szenen wegschneiden und dann deren eigene Story erfinden. Machen die doch die ganze Zeit auch. 10-mal schlimmer.
Thank you for your service. I appreciate your service.
Back up 10 seconds, please. And then just pause right there. We just heard a voice say something to you, Mr. Balch, about people throwing rocks or something along those lines. I don't really need to know exactly what they said, but did you hear that voice?
The police officer from the Bearcat, yes.
That's what I was going to ask. That's one of the law enforcement officers in that armored vehicle that you're walking past, correct?
Yes.
And this, what we're watching in this video happens a few minutes after those same Bearcats had come to the 59th Street property and handed you some bottles of water, correct?
Yes.
And they say to you something to the effect of, "We appreciate you guys." Do you remember that?
I do.
That's when you were on the 59th Street property and you were acting like you were guarding that property, correct?
Yes.
So, how did it make you feel when the police are letting you pass the lines, they're warning you about people throwing rocks, they're handing out bottles of water, they're telling you that they appreciate you? How'd that make you feel?
I didn't really care. I was thankful for the water because I had OC stuff, gas in my eyes, but I didn't really notice or care.
It didn't make you feel like they approved of what you were doing?
No.
It didn't make you feel like you're emboldened now to go out there and act on their behalf?
No.
Let's play the video here, please. You yelled something friendly. I'm not sure how many times, but you yelled friendly out.
Yes.
This is, if I can use the pointer, you are crossing on the west side of Sheridan Road. You are crossing south across 60th Street here.
Okay, das ist
heading
langweilig.
across the police line, which had barricaded across 60th and Sheridan. Fair?
Yes.
You understood at this moment that you are now entering a crowd of whatever you want to call them. Protesters, demonstrators.
Ja, kranken Menschen, das ist
Attorneys
es.
call them rioters or looters or whatever. That's who you're going to now be part of. You're going to be in that crowd, right?
I was walking through, I announced myself as friendly and that I was there to help them.
Because you had to do that to warn these people that, hey, I'm on your side, right?
I told them that I was friendly.
Because if you didn't say that, you were worried they would see you as hostile, correct?
Can you re-ask your question?
Sure.
I'm trying to
Absolutely.
understand.
If you're going to go up to Dominic Black or Ryan Balch, you don't need to tell them you're friendly because they know that you're friends, right? We don't tell this to our friends.
Yeah.
We say friendly to people that aren't our friends, people that might be hostile to us, right?
Yeah, I said it to them because they were throwing rocks at me, and when I told them I was friendly, they stopped.
Hört ihr das? Die werfen Steine auf ihn.
Accurate, they were
Junge, das ist nicht normal, Junge. Sterne, also Steine, hallo?
One of them hit one of the
Und eins von den Kopf in
and
einem
bounced off towards you and Mr. Balch, right?
Yeah.
It didn't do any damage to that armored vehicle, did it?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, can you imagine trying to harm an armored vehicle with a rock? That's pretty hard to do, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't, no one was throwing rocks at you, but you were kind of in the ricochet line of fire. It's fair to say? So you wanted to let these people know that, hey, I might look like I'm on the other side, but I'm really friendly. Fair?
I wasn't on any side, but...
Ja, waren gar keine Seite gewesen.
You might appear to
Das sind über eine Seite.
I mean, that was what you were worried about, right? When you said friendly? And I notice you looking over at your attorney a lot. Can you... I'm trying to ask you. When you...
Sag still, Alter, das machst du selber die ganze Zeit.
He's looking directly at Mr. Binger, and I'm behind him. He accused Mr. Rittenhouse of looking at his attorney. Does he want him to look at the ceiling?
Echt so.
I'll continue, guys. You, at this very moment, announced yourself as friendly because you were worried that the people on the other side of that street would see you as hostile. Fair?
I can't tell you how I think they would see me, but I just told them I was friendly.
And I want to make sure you understand my question, because I was asking you what you thought when you said this. You said you announced yourself as friendly because you thought to yourself at that very moment, I'm walking into a group that is hostile to me. Isn't that true?
It looked hostile. They were throwing rocks at the squad car. Not the squad cars, the armored police cars.
And you felt it was necessary to tell them friendly, 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 so that they wouldn't do anything to you. Fair?
Yes.
Let's continue the video.
Ja, er sagt doch, dass man eine völlige Person ist. Ich wusste ja nicht, dass er gegen die Schweine redet da.
There's a person that comes up to you carrying a skateboard. Do you see that?
I do.
And he's got some fire extinguishers slung over his shoulder?
Yes.
And he says something to you about something putting out fires, and you respond, they know. Did I understand what you said correctly there? They know?
That's what I just heard, but I don't remember that interaction very well, other than helping the guy after with the shoulder.
And that's going to come up in a second here, but when you're talking to this individual about the fire extinguishers, do you remember anything about that conversation?
It's hard to recall, but I think it was about fires, that they were putting out fires.
Okay. And when you said they know, who's they?
I don't recall.
Do you have any idea what you were talking about?
I don't.
It seems to me, Mr. Rittenhouse, that this person is suggesting he's going to go put out some fires, and you're sort of assuring him that you don't need to, it's okay. Would that be a fair interpretation, or no?
No.
Okay. But you don't remember
what was it about, other than fires, and I don't recall it.
This is one of the guys in the group that you later got your fire extinguisher from, right?
No.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's continue. Brian, can you...
Everybody ever heard nobody? It's a little spicy, that's all. Yeah, it sells it.
someone's got some medical weed, I'll tell you that.
You're walking around asking people in this crowd if they need medical. And you talked earlier about treating a couple, I don't know, somebody at the 59th Street car source, right?
Minor injuries.
Minor injuries. When you were walking around outside that property, when you're out in the street, announcing what you're announcing, did anybody respond and say, yeah, I need help from you?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't recall an exact time, but somebody cut their finger open and I gave them some gauze and some bandage tape.
Was that before or after this? Do you remember?
Before.
Where
I don't recall.
And was this a situation where you announced or yelled out that you could help, and then somebody said, "Yeah, I need some help"? Is that what went on in that situation?
Yes.
As you're walking along here, from this point until the end, so you shoot Rosenbaum and Huber and Grosskreutz, no one in this crowd ever says to you, "Yeah, I do need medical. Come over and help me." Correct?
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
Let's continue. This is the individual who accuses you of pointing your gun at them, right?
Yes.
And he says that you did so when
Weil
he
es halt
was
schwarz
out
ist,
of
wissen,
vehicle,
weiß man ja
right?
nicht, muss man
Yes.
irgendwas
And in
bereithalten.
fact, he had been at the 59th Street car source location, climbing on, sitting on, jumping on one of the vehicles in that lot, hadn't he?
Not that I'm aware of. I know I heard Joanne Fiedler testify to that, but I don't remember seeing him at that location.
No,
But he accuses you of that here,
He does.
and you tell him, basically, yeah, I did point the gun at you, right?
I shrugged it off and said, yeah, I did, sarcastically, meaning I didn't.
Was
but
passiert
I
war
just
gerade
didn't
nicht
want a
on?
confrontation, so I was
Wie
like,
bist du
I
denn
did,
nicht
and
on?
walked away.
Why did you lie to him?
Ich guck mir
I didn't lie to
Karetenhaus
him, I was using
nicht an.
sarcasm.
Ziemlich spannend.
The words you said, yeah, I did, those weren't true, were they?
We're now fighting over sarcasm. This is a murder trial.
Echt schon, Alter, was hat er da mit Sarkasmus da zu tun?
When you told that individual, yeah, I did point a gun at you, that wasn't true, was it?
I didn't point a gun at him.
So, why did you react to him that way in that particular moment?
I thought that would be the best way to avoid conflict. I just said, yeah, I did, sarcastically, like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What conflict were you trying to avoid?
Any conflict, if he would have got, like, he was accusing me of something I didn't do.
Ist so,
so I
wenn man eine
thought
Waffe
the best
zeigt,
thing
die ist still.
the best thing to do would be to walk away instead of getting into some argument. So,
But you didn't just walk away. You said to him sarcastically, yeah, I did.
I said sarcastically, I did, and walked away.
Because you were worried about a conflict. What conflict were you worried about?
A verbal argument.
This individual is clearly expressing to you that he's unhappy because he thought you pointed your gun at him, correct?
Yes.
And you can understand why someone would be upset when you point an AR-15 at them, correct?
Yes.
You knew that even before this, right?
Oh
Yes.
ja,
In
so
fact,
schlimm ist,
back
wenn
at
es
the
geschossen
59th
wird.
Street
Das
car
ist schlimm
source,
dann.
that crowd that you described as not having any friction, many in that crowd got upset because they thought people in your group were pointing their laser pointers at them. Do you remember that?
I saw it in the videos, but I don't know what other people were doing.
I'm not saying anybody actually was. I'm saying the crowd was upset, and you knew that. You heard them complaining, correct?
Watching the videos, yes.
And even at that time, that night, you heard the crowd upset because they thought members of your group pointing their laser pointers at you. Do you remember that from that night?
Sorta, yes or no. I remember Ryan Balch saying something like telling the people to stop pointing their lasers at people or something. I don't really remember that.
Ryan Balch was telling the people in your group to stop doing that.
The people on the roof
who were part of your group,
Also, ich
right?
finde
That were with
selbstverwählt
that
ist
were
kein
there, yes.
Mörder,
So-
also
You know, when we're talking about laser pointers, we're talking about the sight at the end of some guns that helps almost like this, right? If somebody does this at me, you know, that could be someone pointing a gun, correct?
Junge,
Could be
vergessen
seen
Stück
as
mit
that.
der Waffenkarte.
And that's what the crowd was complaining about, right?
Yeah.
So you knew from that crowd incident, and you certainly knew from this incident, that when people have guns pointed at them, it can really escalate the situation, correct?
Yeah, I don't think anybody had lasers on their guns. I think
Yeah, but let's go back to your group at 59th Street, because you actually didn't know any of those people other than Dominic and Nick Smith, right?
yes.
You had just met Ryan Balch for the first time 3 or 4 hours before this video, right?
Yeah.
You had just met Jason Lakowski for the first time, just actually only a few minutes before this, right? Because he didn't get in until 10:45.
Correct.
So at this point in the video, I don't know, this is probably about 11:30 or so at night,
I met him about 35 minutes prior to that.
and probably had only spent, what, 10, 15 minutes at all in the same location as Jason Lakowski before you walk south?
Yes.
So, again, Jason Lakowski was someone you'd never met before that night,
Correct.
and you barely spent any time with him that night, correct?
Correct.
And of course, the people up on the roof, other than Dominic Black and Nick Smith, you didn't know any of them before that night either, correct?
I knew Dominic Black and Nick Smith, but the people on
I misspoke their
yeah,
names.
sorry.
Dominic Black and Nick Smith.
I knew those are the two people I knew on the roof.
Other than that, you didn't know anyone else before this night. Fair?
Correct.
Now, when this little interaction that we've just watched happens, you're still walking with Ryan Balch, aren't you?
I'm not. I thought I was at the time, but seeing hindsight view, I'm not.
When you decided to cross 60th with Ryan Balch, you two talked about the fact that if you get separated, to go back to the 59th Street car source, right?
I don't recall that conversation happening.
But you tried to do that, didn't you?
I did.
Because you felt like if I'm out here by myself, that's not good. I need to head back, right?
Yes.
And you also talked to Ryan Balch about the fact that when you get out into this crowd, keep your mouth shut.
Keep your
Don't
mouth
mention
shut.
anything. Didn't Ryan talk to you about that?
No, we didn't.
Niemand hat darüber geredet, Alter.
So at this very moment, you're telling us you've lost track of Ryan Balch.
Zurück, bist du jetzt wieder on?
A little bit ahead, but around that time, yes.
Okay,
Let's
auch nicht
continue.
mehr. What the fuck?
Pause. You have just walked off the screen, heading east across Sheridan Road to the Ultimate gas station, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you don't know where Ryan Balch is, correct?
When I stop and look around, yes.
Es ist echt
And instead of
wirklich krass, wie die
deciding to head
argumentieren,
back at
Alter.
this point, you go over to Ultimate Gas
Junge,
and you talk to some folks over there.
In welche Richtung er
I
gegangen ist.
walk over to
Wie
the
ist er
Ultimate gas station,
umgekommen?
I
Aber
walk
ja, scheiß
around,
Mensch,
and
was?
I try to see if I can find Mr. Balch.
And you couldn't do that.
No.
So then you decided to approach the police line and cross back, correct?
Yes.
Because you decided your best course of action at that point would be to return to the same group that you'd been with, correct?
Yes.
Now, at that moment in time, the police had pushed everybody south of 60th, right?
Sorta. I don't really know if there were.
I said south of 60th. Let's go back a little bit. We watched that interview with Richie McGinnis where he first comes up to you and talks to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
you remember that?
Yes,
And you're standing there at the 59th Street property, aren't you?
I am.
And he talks to you about what you're going to do, and you're going to run out and help people.
Ja,
things
dann
like
lass
that,
mal
right?
Videos zeigen, wie die
At that point, the police had already
Da wird alles
passed
wieder
with all the
zurückkommen.
Bearcats and MRAPs and armored vehicles, right?
It's what it looks like, yes.
And they had established a line on 60th and Sheridan, correct?
Yes.
And they pushed all of the protesters, demonstrators, rioters, whatever you want to call them, all of them south of 60th, correct?
I don't know if I can honestly answer all of them. I don't know. I believe there are some people still north down Sheridan and in the put across the street.
So, were there, I mean, we saw a crowd earlier of lots of protesters out in the street. That group, the numbers had dwindled quite a bit.
Yes.
So after the police move everybody south of 60th, there's no more actual threat to the 59th Street car source, is there?
I don't know.
Well, at that moment in time, what imminent threats did you see to the 59th Street car source property?
I don't know.
Do you remember seeing any protesters out in the street in front of the 59th Street car source after the police pushed everybody south of 60th?
I believe there were some across the street, but not many. I can't recall completely.
And that was just 2 or 3 people, right?
I don't know how many people.
None of those people came across the street to the 59th Street car source, did they?
I don't know. If they did, I would have walked off by now.
So
I
you
don't
didn't
know.
come across the street.
I did not.
Fair to say that after the police pushed everybody south of 60th, you never saw any people threatening that property, correct?
I didn't see anybody.
And your goal that night, you took it upon yourself to protect the 59th Street property, correct?
The owners asked.
Sure. But you were going to station yourself at that property to try and protect it from damage. Fair?
The car source locations, yes.
And once the police had pushed everybody south of that, there was no more danger.
At that car source location, yes.
Okay. So, why not go home at that point?
Because the police were still pushing people back, and then they were backing up, and I was still helping people provide medical first aid.
Okay, so the police had established the line at 60th with their Bearcats at that point, right?
Yes.
And there was no indication that they were going to reverse and back up and move back north again that you saw, correct?
No, they did it earlier in the night where they did the same thing.
Right, but this is at 11:30, 11:40 at night, and they've established that, the police have established that line, and as far as you can tell, it's going to stay there, right?
I don't know.
And you talked about trying to provide medical help, but there's no one around that needs medical help at the 59th Street car source at that point, is there?
Not that I noticed.
So you don't have any purpose there anymore, do you?
Other than...
So why not go home?
Because I was going to help people provide first aid and medical assistance.
But that wasn't the reason you were there that night. You were there that night to protect the 59th Street car source.
It was one of the reasons I was there. Part of my reasons of being there was to protect the car source properties and provide first aid and medical assistance.
So you went out in the crowd, like we see in this video, looking for anyone who needed your help.
If somebody asked if somebody said they need help, I would have helped them.
So why go with Ryan Bulge?
Because you're safer and better in pairs when there's somebody else that's also with you.
So when you crossed 60th, you were worried about your safety?
A little bit.
Even though you think this is not a hostile crowd and you're there to help them, you were still worried about your safety. That's why you needed Bulge to back you up, right?
I said I didn't think they were hostile towards me. I didn't say that they weren't a hostile crowd.
So let me rephrase my question to take that into account. You didn't think this was a crowd that was hostile to you personally, and you thought you were going to help them. But yet you also felt you needed a backup, an armed former Army infantryman to protect you. Fair?
Yes.
And yet when he's gone, and you can't find him, you don't immediately go back, right?
I looked for him for a second, and then I think max I looked for him for like 3 minutes, and then I tried to go back.
And when you couldn't get back straight across the police lines, did you decide to try and go around the police lines? For example, the Ultimate Gas Station is here at 60th and Sheridan. Why didn't you walk down the street here and go over this way and around?
I don't know.
Why didn't you go west, over this way, and go around?
I don't know. I guess it was very close in time that I was heading back, that I was turned down by the police before I got the phone call from Dominic Black. So I guess I didn't have time to really think like which ways I could go around.
You knew the layout of downtown Kenosha, right? Because you said you drove that area the whole time, right?
A little bit.
So you go over to the Ultimate Gas Station and you spend some time talking with folks that are there who are similarly dressed as you. They've got similar clothing, similar weapon, things like that, right?
Similar weapons. I wouldn't say similarly dressed.
But you went over there because you felt that those were people doing something similar to what you were doing that night. Fair?
I thought that would be the safest spot for me to go.
Why did you think you'd be safe with those people?
Because I was alone, and they were, like I said, you're better in pairs. I didn't want to be alone in that situation.
You didn't want to be alone out here with this crowd that we see on the screen right now.
I did not want to be alone.
You wanted to be with the group at Ultimate Gas that had AR-15s like you, right?
I wanted to be back at the car source where there weren't people around.
Right, and we've talked about that, but initially you go to Ultimate Gas
to look for Ryan, yes.
But you also talk to people who have AR-15s just like you, right?
I wouldn't say I talked to them. I asked, after the phone call, I asked the guy for a fire extinguisher to come with me.
Let's play exhibit number 11 at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. This is the Corey Elijah live stream when he's in the Ultimate Gas lot. Mr. Rittenhouse, that's Ryan Balch standing there in the Ultimate Gas lot, correct?
Yes.
Let's play this video. We just saw you run through this video, correct?
Yes.
I started this video at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. It is now paused at the 54-minute and 56-second mark. So for 26 seconds, Corey Elijah has Ryan Balch on screen, center of this video during that entire time, right?
Yes.
And you run right past where Corey Elijah's standing, right?
Yes.
And Ryan Balch is loitering there in the middle of the screen for at least 26 seconds, right?
That's what it looks like on the screen.
And your testimony is you were trying your best to find Ryan Balch at the Ultimate gas station at this point? Because you needed him to protect you?
I was looking for Ryan Balch, but I didn't notice him as I was running away. Oh, not running away, running towards Car Source 3.
But for 26 seconds before you start running, he's standing right there, isn't he?
Yes, and when he's standing right there, before I run with the fire extinguisher, I'm over here on the phone with Dominic Black.
How long was your phone call with Dominic Black?
About 30 seconds.
So before that, you've been looking for Ryan Balch?
Before that, I tried to get back to the car source lot number 1.
And you'd also been looking for Ryan Balch?
Seeing if I could see him in the crowd of people.
Because you wanted a partner, a buddy, to protect you.
To protect each other, yes.
And in fact, when you borrowed that fire extinguisher, you asked someone in that group to come along with you, right?
Yes.
Because you wanted someone there to protect you when you go down and put out what you think are some fires, right?
Yes.
Because you know that you're running into a crowd that is not friendly to you, right?
No.
That's why you had to say the word friendly, 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 because you knew this was a crowd that would not see you as friendly, correct?
I screamed friendly, friendly, friendly because somebody screamed burn inside.
I'm talking about when you crossed 60th. You yelled at them.
At that time, yes, but...
And no one in the crowd is yelling burn inside or anything along those lines, are they?
Not at that time.
And you also wanted someone from that group to come along with you when you're going to go down and put out a fire, because you knew full well that anyone running around like you putting fires out is going to cause a reaction in the crowd, a hostile reaction, correct?
I didn't think it would cause a negative reaction. I wanted somebody to come with me because you're better in pairs, and I thought there were other people at that car source before I got there.
Well, Dominic, if you're telling us that Dominic Black called you to run 3 blocks down the road to put out a fire at the 63rd Street car source, then you must have known at that moment that there wasn't anyone else down there, right? Why would you need to go if somebody's already down there?
Mr. Black said to me on the phone, hey, they're setting fires at the other car source. I need you to get down there and put out the fires. It must not have, I don't think it, I took it as there's not other people down there.
Why would you need to go 3 blocks down if there were already people there?
No.
This witness doesn't know the answer, whether there are people there or not.
He's told us he thought there were, so I'm probing the basis of that and his understanding at the time. I'll repeat the question. Why would you need to run 3 blocks down to the 63rd car source if you thought there were already people there?
I thought there were people there, but Dominic asked me to go down there. I thought that was to help put out the fires that were down there.
This video that we're watching is minutes after you've left the 59th Street car source, right?
Yes.
And when you leave the 59th Street car source, you're with Ryan Balch.
Yes.
And then this reporter, Richie McGinnis.
Yes.
And as far as you know, when you leave 59th Street car source, everybody in your group is still back there, right?
At the car source.
At 59th Street car
Yes.
source. Everybody's still back there.
Yes.
Joanne Fiedler.
Yes.
Dustin Collette. Dominic Black. Nick Smith. Jason Lakowski. Anyone else. They're all still there, right?
At that location, yes.
So none of your group is already down at 63rd Street car source, right?
The other group that showed up after we got done taking the pictures with the, I think I said 2 or 3 vans, I believe they were still down there.
And that was 2 or 3 vans of people that came out with what have been described as melee weapons, right? Like bats and clubs and things like that. Do you recall that? First of all, do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Do you remember seeing those 2 or 3 vans come to that location?
I do.
Do you remember seeing people get out of those vans?
Yes, like I saw, I think there were 6 people they in total.
And you saw them with weapons?
I saw them with rifles. I don't think I remember melee weapons.
They were armed, correct?
Yes.
And you believed that they were going to be the ones protecting the 63rd Street car source, correct?
Yes.
So at this point in time in the evening, had anybody told you that those folks had left the 63rd Street car source?
No.
So when you're running with this fire extinguisher, you think there's already a group that's designated to that spot that's still down there, right?
Yes.
So again, why do you feel that you needed to run 3 blocks down there with a fire extinguisher if you thought there were already people down there protecting the property?
Because Dominic called me and asked me to go help put out the fires down there.
And in that phone call, Dominic never told you that any of the members of the 59th Street group that you were part of, he never said any of them were down there at 63rd, right?
Yeah.
And he never told you that the group that was supposed to be down there, he never told you anything about them, whether they were there or not there. He never mentioned that. Fair?
It didn't come up.
And you asked the people that you got the fire extinguisher from to come with you, right?
Yes.
You were looking for Ryan Balch for backup, right?
I was looking around for him, yes.
You had already tried to go back to the 59th Street location, right?
Yes.
And all of those failed.
Yes.
So then you decide to take it upon yourself to head down to 63rd Street to put out fires. Fair?
I wouldn't say that. I would say I went to go put out the fires that I was there to do. When I say protect the property, I mean by like put out fires. So I went to go put out the fires. I just believed there were people there.
And you brought your AR-15 along.
Yes.
Why?
Because it was with me already.
Yeah, but you've taken it off earlier when you were treating someone. You gave it to Joanne Fiedler, right?
Yes.
So you know how to take it off, don't you?
Yes.
And you can make a choice on your own whether or not to go armed with it or whether to give it to the person who is the lawful owner of it on that date, Dominic Black. Correct?
I didn't take my rifle off there because there was nobody I could hand it to. And when I took it off to hand it to Joanne Fiedler, I was in a safe spot in that corner of the building where there were people protecting me at that time right there. When I went to go to the car source number 3 to put out the fires, there was nobody I could hand my rifle to that could protect me while I'm providing first aid to somebody.
But you still knew you had it.
My rifle, yes.
You still knew you had it strapped around your body.
Yes.
And you made a conscious decision to bring it along, right?
Yes.
Why? You gave an answer about how he already had it, and we go through on that. So
I did, but I don't really understand.
Well, was it simply that, well, I've already got it strapped on, so I might as well bring it along? Is that what you're telling us? You decided to bring along the AR-15 because, well, I've already got it? Is that your answer?
I don't think I was thinking, like, hey, I'm going to take my rifle off. I wouldn't have because there was people around that could have stolen my gun, and I didn't. I didn't take my rifle off because I was going there alone. I was going to be running there alone, and I didn't take it off because no one else was there to protect me as I was going there, so that's why I brought it.
For protection?
Yes.
You brought it along down there because you felt like you would need to protect yourself against someone else harming you, correct?
If that would have happened, I would have protected myself, but I didn't think I was going to be attacked in ambush.
But you just said you had it for protection. What were you expecting you would need protection from?
I thought we had covered much of this before.
I'm focusing in on the time period where he is heading down to the 63rd Street car source. I have not asked him about this yet, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead, but you need to pick up the pace somewhat.
When you decided to bring your AR-15 loaded with 30 rounds down to the 63rd Street car source location, what did you think you needed protection against?
I didn't really think I was going to have to protect myself.
You told us just now you brought it along for protection.
I did, but I didn't think I was going to need to protect myself.
You brought it along for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection? I'm trying to clarify the two different answers that I think you just gave, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead.
Do you understand the question?
Not really.
I asked you why you brought the gun. You said you needed it for protection. I said, protection against what? You said you didn't think you needed protection. I'm confused. Can you help me understand why you're telling us you needed a gun for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection?
I brought the gun for my protection, but what I was saying is I didn't think I would have to use the gun and end up defending myself.
So you, in this video, are running.
Yes.
You run across the screen. Yes?
Yes.
And then I think you testified on direct that as you made it down the block, you, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you stopped running and you walked for a little while. Is that right?
I jogged and walked occasionally.
Carrying a fire extinguisher and your gun.
Yes.
And you're alone at that point with no backup, right?
Yes.
And you testified that when you got down to the 63rd Street car source, you indicated that you came upon that vehicle we've been calling the Duramax. You know what vehicle I'm talking about?
I do.
And you indicated that when you got there, you walked around that vehicle and you saw a person that you now know to be Joshua Zeminski. Is that right?
I walked up to the Duramax. Yes.
You didn't know Joshua Zeminski's name at that point, correct?
No.
You hadn't taken any notice of him at all up until that moment, all night long. Fair?
Fair.
This is the first time that you see that this is a person that comes to your attention. Fair?
Yes.
And you said he had a gun in his hand.
Yes.
And you put the fire extinguisher down on the ground.
I dropped the fire extinguisher.
And then you hear or see Mr. Rosenbaum coming from behind you.
When I get to the Duramax, I step forward, and then Mr. Zeminski turns towards me, and he steps towards me. I drop the fire extinguisher, step back, and that's when I see, I go to run back towards 59th Street.
And Mr. Rosenbaum is coming.
And then that's when I notice Mr. Rosenbaum running at me, leaving me with no other. Mr. Zeminski in front of me with the gun. Mrs. Zeminski right there, a couple feet away, some other people.
And then the chase happens. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Have you told us everything that you did when that situation just happened at the Duramax?
Yes.
Can you play the iPad, please? The iPad with the drone video? This is exhibit number 73. What are you guys going to do? Mr. Rittenhouse, this is a video that has been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 73. This is a video taken by a drone that was hovering south of 63rd at the time that you shot Mr. Rosenbaum. We're going to play the beginning of this video on the iPad, and I'm going to have Detective Howard use the pinch and zoom feature on the iPad to zoom in on the area.
What you think? Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial.
Was soll hier noch Münzen sammeln? Steine sammelt.
What's up?
Your Honor.
What? Excuse me, what? I think they went upstairs. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I don't know what the state's going to do next, but I suspect that it's something along the lines of they're going to use the iPad, and Mr. Binger was talking about pinching the screen. iPads, which are made by Apple, have artificial intelligence in them that allow things to be viewed through 3 dimensions and logarithms. Logarithms, I don't understand at all either. And it uses artificial intelligence or their logarithms to create what they believe is happening. So this isn't actually enhanced video. This is Apple's iPad programming creating what it thinks is there, not what necessarily is there. And I don't know what's going to happen, but we had this video enhanced. We have testimony regarding it, and this is one of the topics that came up. I asked my expert. I said, do you know of anything that does something like that? Because that was when Detective Antaramian testified about pinching his telephone, and that's what I was told, and that's what I think this is going, and I don't think that it's appropriate. It's wrong.
Mr. Binger?
Your Honor, I think everybody in this room has a smartphone, whether it's an Apple iPhone or some other device, and I think we've all taken a photograph or a video at one point or another and used the pinch to zoom in feature. This is a common part of everyone's everyday life. In the olden days, you had a photograph and a magnifying glass, right? That doesn't change the photograph. When you use a magnifying glass to look at words on a paper or a photograph, the magnifying glass doesn't change the image. It doesn't change the pixels on the paper. It doesn't change the words in the book. All it does is make them easier to see. The pinch and zoom feature on the iPad or the iPhone or an Android phone, whatever device everyone in this room has, does that exact same thing. Now, if counsel has an expert who will say that this is unreliable or distorting the image or something along those lines, even though this is something everybody in this room has done with countless videos and photos throughout the last 10 years of our lives here, this is a fact, this is a feature of everyday life in America now with smartphones. If they want to have an expert come in and say it's unreliable and you can't believe what's on that screen, they can do that. We're still in their case. And then the jury can make a decision as to whether or not pinching and zooming on an iPad or an iPhone is tampering with the video or altering the image shouldn't be given any weight. So if they want to make a jury question out of this, they are free to do so. We're still in their case in chief. But I don't, frankly, understand or agree with anything counsel just said. I've used my phone, I think probably you have too. I think this is something within everyone's common knowledge, to pinch and zoom on a screen. And that's what's going on here. It does not change the image in any way. It just makes it like a magnifying glass.
Well, I don't know. When I put the magnifying glass up, then it's enlarging the image. It is not altering the image. What he's saying, and I think, and I know less than anyone in the room here, I'm sure, about all this stuff, but I'm hearing him to say that they're actually artificially inserting pixels into there, which is altering the object which is being portrayed. And so, you know what, I myself, when confronted with these changes in technology, what I usually do is to admit the evidence, but make sure that the finder of fact is aware of the fact that it is not the original image and the method by which it's been enhanced. You're suggesting that I should make the defense bring in an expert for it. My thought would be that actually you're the one who's offering the exhibit, so you should be in a position to offer evidence as to the fact that it is not distorting the object which is depicted.
I would submit, Your Honor, that I think it's common sense to everyone in this room that that's not what's going on here. And what counsel is saying about Apple software and logarithms and things like that is not something that people in this room are familiar with.
I thought I heard the expert say on the stand. Believe me, again, this is not something I'm familiar with, but I thought I heard the expert say that you brought down from the crime lab that in fact that there were alterations made by adding pixels. That's an alteration of the image. So I don't have any problem with it being received, but you're going to have someone testify that it's a reliable, I don't want to say mirror image, but, because obviously if you insert more items into an area of space, it's going to distort what's depicted.
I think, Your Honor, when the pinch and zoom maneuver is used on the screen, it actually, it takes the high resolution that we see here and it brings it into the point where the pixels are actually spread out more.
You know what? I'm not going to accept as accurate what Richards is saying, and I'm not going to accept what you're telling me. I said if you can offer somebody who's knowledgeable in these areas, the document or I think you should be allowed to use the image. But this is high risk to me. If you insert more data into an area of space, well, you're wagging your head no. Tell me where I'm wrong.
There's no proof in this record that we're doing that, Your Honor.
I didn't say there was proof of it. I said you have the burden.
Nein, das
You're
ist
the
doch
proponent
scheiße,
of the exhibit,
Mann.
and you need to tell me that it's reliable.
The exhibit's already in evidence, Your Honor.
That I know.
Exhibit is not,
This is not in here.
Well, then why show it? I mean, the reason you want to show it is so because it enhances the image, right? No, one at a time.
I'll say what you're just saying. The defense has taken videos and photos and cropped them, zoomed in on them, on many exhibits in this trial. And this is, again, like I said, the magnifying glass is not changing the image. What the expert testified to about his software program was that he uses, I think he called it AMFAR5 or something like that. It was a software program he was using to create the additional images or the exhibits that were introduced with regard to this drone video. And he talked about what that software program does. He was not talking about the common, ordinary, everyday pinch and zoom feature on the Apple. They're two different things, Your Honor, and I want to be precise about this because I don't think it's fair to equate the technical video editing software used by the crime lab with pinching and zooming on an iPhone. They're different software programs, different procedures, and I don't think it's fair to extrapolate this. Every one of those jurors is familiar with this process. This is a fundamental part of It's much like 100 years ago people used magnifying glasses. This is no different than that. And I think this is common knowledge, and I don't think I need any sort of expertise on this issue. If the defense wants to quibble with it, they have an expert who can offer testimony. But the exhibit's already in evidence. It would be no different than me putting off a photograph of it and then holding up an enlargement. I mean, we had a guy coming yesterday with Walgreens prints. This is what is done with photographs all the time. There's enlargements done in the lab. It doesn't change the pixels.
No. You know, I don't want to hear about what happened earlier in the trial that came in without objection. If you didn't object, then I didn't address it. Now, I'm not going to police this case, so everybody, anytime somebody wants to put some evidence in, I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, what about that? What about that? I have to have an objection. I get an objection, and then I rule on it. There has been no objection during this trial when either side has exploded an image or anything like that. If you'd have brought in an objection, I would have ruled on it. But to say now, well, this has already been done during the trial. I've got an objection in front of me now. He's suggesting that the amplifying the image is altering what is portrayed, the image which is portrayed, and you're giving me as a defense, it's no different from using a magnifying glass. I don't believe that, because if I take, the image is the same, and all it is doing is improving my poor old vision. Here you've got someone, to correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe the expert testified that he had inserted, or that either him or the device inserted additional into the image.
Gib mir doch einfach die Münzen, Mann. Du machst doch so nah dran.
The question is
Das kann doch nicht wahr sein,
is the image in its virginal state?
I care about what program it is, Your Honor, because these are technical issues. Mr. Richards has just made representations with no basis whatsoever. Absolutely. Mr. Richards has just made technical representations with no basis in this record whatsoever. He is questioning a common part of life that we use, everyone uses, every single day. The expert who testified was talking about a different software program, and it does make a difference.
I don't know.
Then if it's going to be an issue, let's
you're the proponent. I said before, I'm not going to talk about it further. You're the proponent, and you need to assure me before I let the jury
Hallo, lass los.
Speculate on it, that it is a reliable method that does not distort what is detected. Okay, so we're going to take a break.
I understood you correctly. We can play it now, and then we'll tie it up later.
I don't think that's what I said.
That's what I thought you said, Tom. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know. Maybe I did. If I said that, shame on me. I said that we're going to take a break right now. And I said, before I'm going to allow this to be amplified in the way that you want, it is going to have to be shown, demonstrated to me that it's a reliable way to do it.
Then you would request an adjournment to do that now.
Well, we're not going to adjourn the case now to do that.
Well, before I'm done with my cross-examination of this witness, I would like to use this video, and I will need some time to make arrangements for what you're asking. So I would ask that before I would like time to do that before I'm done examining this witness, because this is an important exhibit that I...
Was gehst du in die andere Richtung, du Idiot?
Right away, and maybe you can get somebody
Meine Güte, Alter, Schatz. Toll, dass immer in eine andere Richtung oben geht.
Okay. Let's aim for 320 on that clock, which is...
Warum machst du immer sowas?
Let's aim for 320.
Das geht nicht. Was ist denn das für eine Scheiße? Wie soll das denn funktionieren, Alter? Wie soll man diese 3 Münzen denn da bekommen? Das ist doch gar nicht, geht doch gar nicht mal, ey. Meine Güte, Mann. Hallo. Mein Gott, diese Kamera ist einfach gruselig, ey. Wie soll man diese Scheiße bekommen, ey? Ja, immer macht er das. Ich verstehe es nicht, was das ist. Meine Güte, hör doch mal auf mit diesem Scheiß. Ja, er greift immer und dann lässt er los. Hallo. Ja, ich verstehe, was ich tun soll. Warum machst du das? Ich verstehe es nicht. Ganz ehrlich, das macht keinen Sinn, ey. Warum lässt du ihn mal los, Mann? Mann, das ist so nervig, Alter, ganz ehrlich, ey. Was ist das für ein Regler? Diese Mission ist scheiße mit diesen Münzen, Alter, ganz ehrlich, ey. Ja, warum macht das immer? Jetzt, wie soll ich das hinbekommen, bitte? Das geht doch gar nicht. Hier. Wie soll man das hinbekommen? Das ist doch gar nicht möglich. Wie soll man diese scheiß Münzen bekommen? Mann, ich habe keine Ahnung, Leute, ganz ehrlich. Das geht nicht. Ein bisschen Gründen. Es ist nicht so easy irgendwie. Das sind vor allem, ich brauche nur noch 3 Münzen. Natürlich scheitere ich bei 3 Münzen, ist ja klar. Genau bei 3 Münzen scheitere ich jetzt. Mann, ey, das ist doch krank. Hä? Natürlich schick mir eine Münze! Was ist das denn für eine Scheiße? Ich möchte sterben gehen, ey. Ich möchte aber sterben gehen. Wirklich, das kann doch einfach nicht wahr sein. Gib mir doch einfach eine Münze hier irgendwie. Kann mir nicht einfach irgendeiner hier eine Münze droppen, bitte? Das hat hier keiner meine Münze. Das kann doch nicht wahr sein, Alter. So scheiße. Keiner hat natürlich eine Münze, natürlich. Ja, lass. Warte mal, da oben. Da oben sind Münzen! Das sind sogar so viele Münzen. Ich bin so ein Idiot. Ich hätte das auch da machen können. Oh mein Gott, Alter, mache ich diese letzten blöden Münzen da oben, obwohl ich sie hier tun kann. Ich voll Idiot, Alter. Ich bin doch auch so ein Idiot. Na egal. Wir haben es geschafft. Yeah! So. Yahoo! 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 Yahoo!
War vor ein paar Minuten nicht im Stream oder so, weiß nicht. Wieso guckst du jetzt so eine langweilige Gerichtsdings bekommen? Das ist ja echt lame.
Oh ja, dann geh halt aus dem Stream. Es ist egal so, weißt du, für dich ist es lame, für mich ist es nicht lame. Für mich ist das was wichtig halt. Wenn einfach irgendwie ein Mann in der ganzen Scheiße gejagt wird und dann am Ende selbst wieder rummacht und erschossen wird und danach ins Knast wandert, deswegen. Nö. Nö!
Also wenn man sagt, kann man jetzt nicht mitgehen, weil... Nee, jetzt machen wir Sport oder
Naja, okay, bestimmt nicht. Hat es eine Pause gerade irgendwie, das Ding? Hat das Ding eine Pause gerade? Ah! Hier. Gehabt ist. Lass mich in Ruhe mit dieser scheiße Umfrage. Max out! Jetzt lade doch mal! Oh, schicken Andys live. Wisst ihr was, habt sowieso jetzt genug gestreamt. Dann würde man sagen, ich beende heute den Stream. Oder was ist das überhaupt?
We're arguing and we're like millions of miles away. Maybe that was my fault. Maybe that whole argument was my fault. But
Wie lange stream ich?
like,
Ja, 3 Stunden reicht ja auch wieder auch. Ich habe ein bisschen Maus noch gespielt. Deswegen geht dann over 9000. Ich habe das die ganze Zeit drauf geregelt. Ist jetzt auch egal. Wir sehen uns das nächste Mal, Leute. Ich verabschiede mich heute hiermit. Ich hoffe, ihr hattet Fun gehabt. Ihr hattet ziemlich viel Fun über die letzten Münzen. Ich meine, ich war dumm und blind, Alter. Die letzte Münze war da oben. Ich gehe irgendwie ziemlich schnell. Ist auch egal. Naja. Wie gesagt, ciao und bis nächstes Mal. Peace, Leute. Morgen sehen wir uns wieder.